occupy them.
Well, good morning and a warm welcome to Newsfile. Now this week, the latest coup to rock an increasingly fragile sub-region in Niger has brought West Africa to the brink of war. ECOWAS has activated a standby force, but does it even have one? And has authorized its deployment in Niger in a desperate attempt to restore civilian rule. We are drawing the line in the sand, ECOWAS Security Chief Abdel Fattah Musa recently declared on the BBC. He, like our President Akufo-Addo and the rest of ECOWAS member states, are worried about contagion. He said, quote, "If we do not determinedly stop what has happened there, then which country is next?" Now, this morning, the chiefs of defense staff of ECOWAS member states are expected to meet in Accra to finalize the plan of attack. But can ECOWAS afford a war with what I call the Janta Alliance, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali? My guests will discuss. The Bank of Ghana. Now, those three words used to represent, uphold, and defend the stability of our financial sector. But in the last couple of weeks, the Bank of Ghana has been shown to be extremely fragile itself, with a 60+ billion cedi loss and a negative equity. To put it simply, our central bank is broke. The governor and his deputies, his two deputies that is, now have 21 days to resign, according to an ultimatum issued by the NDC minority in parliament. But are they justified when the IMF itself has backed the central bank, justifying the loss and agreeing that it was down to the central bank's participation in the domestic debt exchange, needed to, quote, restore macroeconomic stability and public debt sustainability? Well, that said, why is the BOG spending $250 million to build an office at a time when their own reports show they are broke? And what about the huge sums spent on travels, vehicle maintenance, and others? That's where we will spend most of our time this morning. Then later, investigations continue into the Cecilia Dapa stashed cash scandal. We learned this week more money was seized from her home and her bank accounts were frozen. The police still insist that the $1 million allegedly stolen from her home is her property, even though her statements, referenced both by the AG and the special prosecutor, suggest otherwise. Still more questions. My guest will look into it. Thank you for choosing to stay with your most authoritative news analysis show. This is Newsfile. My name is Evan Smith, and something is away today. We are back with the details.
Small. Your room be too bright, oh.
Why, you be vampire where you know they like sunlight?
Oh my guy, my eyes. Behind the PC problem, in the sun problem, common light bulb stuff.
This no matter. I beg go Robert and Sons. Oh yeah, then my chick to him, I know correct. Cry. Where Robert and Sons sort them out sharp. Now so stylish frames in the rock.
We go Robert and Sons right in. No, I was sitting inside proper.
For over 25 years, Robert & Sons continues to provide specialist eye care for both adults and children. Locate us at Adabraka, Adenta, Kumasi, Usudankwa, Tema, Weja, and East Legon. Call 050-151-9111. Robert & Sons, seeing is believing.
My way insurance, send my way,
my name is Nanama McBrown, and I want to encourage you to dial *165# on MTN to join the My Way family. My Way provides you and a selected family member a cover against death. As a policyholder, you will also have a cover against total permanent disability and hospitalization should you be hospitalized for more than 2 nights. Dial *165# and and join the family. Sanya my way, Kasa no way.
Sanya my way, Kasa no way.
My Way is a product of My Life and MTN Momo. Terms and conditions apply.
Since inception, almost 100% of Ashesi University students have found jobs, started businesses, or gone on to graduate school within 6 months of graduation. From Accra to Nairobi, London to New York, Ashesi graduates are noticed and they are leading successful careers. If you dream of a rewarding life and career, an Ashesi education prepares you for just that. Learn more about applying to Ashesi at www.ashesi.edu.gh.
Oh, Charlie, close the window small. Your room be too bright, oh.
Why, you be vampire where you know they like sunlight?
Oh, my guy, my eyes. Behind the PC problem. In the sun problem. Common light bulb stuff.
This no matter. I beg go Robert and Sons. Oh yeah, then my chick to him, I know correct. Cry. Where Robert and Sons sort them out sharp. Now so stylish frames in the wrong.
We go Robert and Sons right in. No, I was sitting inside proper.
For over 25 years, Robert & Sons continues to provide specialist eye care for both adults and children. Locate us at Adabraka, Adenta, Kumasi, Usudankwa, Tema, Weja, and East Legon. Call 050-151-9111. Robert & Sons, seeing is believing.
My Way Insurance, Abamobia, Sanya my way, Kasa no way.
My name is Nanama McBrown, and I want to encourage you to dial *165# on MTN to join the My Way family. My Way provides you and a selected family member a cover against death. As a policyholder, you will also have a cover against total permanent disability and hospitalization should you be hospitalized for more than 2 nights. Dial *165# and join the family. Sanya My Way. Kasa no way.
Sanya my way, Kasa no way.
My Way is a product of My Life and MTN Momo. Terms and conditions apply.
Joy 99.7 FM.
Fintech.
That is so true, my daughter.
But it's father, it will spoil.
That's not true.
But why?
Why? Syntex was the first to introduce double-layer tanks in Ghana. Syntex again was the first to introduce white inner layers in Ghana. Syntex gives you the biggest warranty, 7 years. No matter your water needs, Syntex is the answer. Syntex tank. Are you strong? Are you tough?
Skincare you deserve.
And thanks for staying with us here on News File. News File, as you know, is always brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner, MTN, wherever you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Duraplast, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplast goes, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing, papepe fie. My Way, just have to dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Cherry Tree Properties, we develop spaces as though we were going to occupy them ourselves. Syntex Tanks, it's strong, it is tough. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. And my guest is joining me right now for a conversation. As I said, we'll start with the situation in Niger and how it's brought the entire West African sub-region to the brink of war. Joining me for a conversation shortly, Professor Kwesi Enin. He's a director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Ken Ofori-Atta, retired, is author, conflict and security analyst, consultant on the UN-AU Joint Planning for AU Peace Support Operations, UNDP consultant on disarmament, South Sudan, adjunct member, Center on Democratic Transitions, Ghana, and former member, Save the Children International Military Advisory Group. They'll take the first bite at our first issue, but before we get into any more of the details, just listen to what has happened in the course of this last week.
Just like the Nigerian Senate turned down President Kpebu in his quest to go to war, the Ghanaian Parliament will do the same. We shall turn down President Akufo-Addo if this matter comes up before Parliament. And that is what we're pushing for. We have been very clear that, look, let us engage in negotiations. Okay. Let us use diplomacy to prevail upon.
But they are not allowing diplomats to even come into the country.
Yes, it is because of the posturing. The initial posturing of ECOWAS wasn't in good taste. So the junta, I am told, were apprehensive of the fact that there was a likelihood that some intelligence people were embedded in the ECOWAS delegation and would spy on them if they were to allow them into their country.
We are now saying that if Niger is not addressed squarely, there could be 2 more between now and the end of next year. And I think you can put me on this.
C. Uphold all measures and principles agreed upon by the extraordinary summit held on Niger on 30th July 2023. Underscore the determination of the ECOWAS authority to keep all options on the table for the peaceful resolution of the crisis. Enforce all measures, in particular border closures and strict travel bans and assets freeze, on all persons or groups of individuals whose actions hinder all peaceful efforts aimed at ensuring the smooth and complete restoration of constitutional order. Warn member states who, by their action directly or indirectly, hinder the peaceful resolution of the crisis in Niger, about the consequences for their action before the community. Call on the African Union to endorse all the decisions taken by the ECOWAS authority on the situation in Niger. Further call on all partner countries and institutions, including the United Nations, to support ECOWAS in its effort to ensure a quick restoration of constitutional order in conformity with its normative instruments. Direct the President of the Commission to monitor the implementation of the sanctions.
Well, that was when ECOWAS finished that meeting. Subsequently, we know they've actually authorized the deployment. This morning, we're learning that the defense chiefs will be meeting in Accra, finalize the plan of attack. Ken Ofori-Atta is with me now via Zoom. Ken, tell me, what do you make of where we are now? They activated the standby force. They authorized the deployment. Now they're meeting to draw plans of attack. Kindly unmute for me.
Sorry, please.
I can hear you now. Okay. And by the way, later we'll also be joined by Dr. Tue Champon. He's a political risk analyst and economist. We'll also be joined by Toma Amehia, a financial analyst and consultant, when we deal with the banking issues, the Bank of Ghana, and the focus is going to be there a bit. Inusa Fuseni will also join us. He's a lawyer and former MP for Tamale Central and former Minister, Roads and Highways, will also join us for a conversation today. Martin Kpebu is also a lawyer, an activist, also will join us. Richard Ahiagba is a communications director, the New Patriotic Party, will also be with us for a conversation. So you don't want to go anywhere, a lot to go through on the issues table for discussion. Ken Ofori-Atta is with me now. I can hear you, Keno. If you can, I was asking you your quick reaction to where we are this morning with the Niger issues. Okay, the audio was great when we started. At least I could hear him a bit. I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me, sir?
It keeps dropping, but it's okay now.
I can hear you, yes. Great. Yeah, you're giving me a reaction to where we are this morning.
Well, where we are is what you summarized, that we have the decision of the ECOWAS authority, and let's point out that only 8 out of the 11 expected heads of state attended. The rest were represented by, other senior politicians from those administrations. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, they've taken a decision which reiterates once again the use of force, i.e. the intervention. And the additional step embedded in that decision is the activation of the ECOWAS standby force, as you said, which has now constrained the military chiefs to convene in Accra, and I suppose together with the ECOWAS standby force chief of staff, to now begin to plan into detail the implementation of that ECOWAS decision. If you want to go into technicalities, this decision can only be executed not earlier than 30 days. So anywhere from 30 days to 90 days, for a number of reasons, primarily planning, and then primarily assembling the forces with the requisite capability.
Well, we have a frozen feed there to him. Let's bring in Professor Kusinin, who is joining us. Prof, thanks for joining us this morning. To pick up from where we just left off, hopefully we can get him back for him to, make his point on this matter. But I wonder what your views are on this. When this started, there's been a lot of, caution issued to the ECOWAS itself that, don't go into war. I mean, tread cautiously, explore and exhaust the diplomatic options on the table. It looks as if it's clear now that if, barring some miracle, the military intervention would happen if today's meeting with the chiefs go according to plan.
Well, I think the cautionary tale or the cautionary advice is based on history and is based on very careful assessment. I heard my brother Festus talking about the practicalities towards initiating the standby force. And once more, I think that the conversations about the standby force represents the lack of long-term planning. We know that a standby force concept basically is for member states of ECOWAS as one of the 5 regional building blocks of the African Union and the African Standby Force concept that authorizes member states to select members of their armed forces for training. And if you read the ECOWAS statement, communique, it talks about the ECOWAS Standby Force components. And I'm happy that my elder brother is back now. Part of those components relates to what? The civilian component, the logistics base that is supposed to be in Freetown, and all other things. The fundamental question here is whether those components mentioned in the communique have been established by member states and the levels of readiness that my big brother Festus mentioned. So the 30 to 90 days is all things being equal. You know, that the troops have been trained, they have done some joint training together, issues of language, hierarchy, command and control, that all these things have been dealt with. If we take 2 things, the logistics base that was supposed to be based in Freetown, there is no base to talk about. If we talk about the civilian component, it hasn't really been activated for years. So what we are talking about is just the reading of the official documents and the steps towards an intervention. The standby force idea was also, if you remember, and here I think I will pray Festus's indulgence to correct me if I'm wrong, was also to respond first and foremost to civil wars and not to constitutional changes or internal political misunderstandings where there is massive buy-in as to what is happening. I mean, there's no conflict in Niger per se. Okay, so triggering the standby force idea is what I term plasticity in ECOWAS's response framework. That there rather ought to be a graduated set of responses as an internal crisis escalates. What we've seen is an automated response from ECOWAS from 0 to 100, making it difficult for them to pull back. Because the military intervention option is always the last option. Okay, but we decided to use that option. And then later on, when the 1 week passed and the junta was solidifying, decided to use mediation. First says only 8 out of the 11 member states were present. Now, 4 member states have undertaken a coup. Multilateral organizations function best when there is compliance to what they have voluntarily signed on to, and when there is a sense of bindingness relating to the values, the norms, the principles, and also the decision-making processes. If you look at the mechanism, Article 28.1, it specifies the processes for force generation that has not been followed. If you read or look at the structure, you know, first, defense chiefs would meet, the members of ministers of defense, whose decisions would then go up for consideration. Quite a number of these decision-making procedures and processes have been hopped over, and then we have taken the decision of last resort. When caution is given, it's not because those of us who are seeking a bit of caution don't believe in constitutionalism. But I think quite a number of us are looking at the geopolitics of an intervention, the multiplicity of interests, but also the potential that it might open a Pandora's box of quite a number of groups who may align not so much with the constitutional debate that has shifted now to a debate around identity, self-perception, exploitation of national resources, and how national resources can be used to benefit the populace. So there are multiple discourses and narratives that an intervention might tie into that might lead to unintended consequences.
And Prof, that's one of the things I wanted to explore a bit more. But you've touched on the processes laid down in the ECOWAS's own rules that govern the activation of the standby force, which, as you've illustrated, they themselves may have violated. They've jumped the gun in many instances. But I want to bring in Professor Baji in on that point. If you consider that they've had at least 5 coups in the last 3 years alone in the sub-region, the latest, of course, being what we saw in Burkina Faso, and we've seen the Mali, the Sahel region is struggling. ECOWAS, many have suggested, in fact, if you listen to Abdel Fattah, who is the security chief, makes the point that there's a fear of contagion. And it says, if they do not deal with this decidedly now, then you risk encouraging others to follow suit. Doesn't that explain why they may have escaped their own processes and gotten straight to the end when it comes to deployment instead of first exploring the diplomatic option?
Well, the network dropped again. I've spoken with your producer to go off video and then talk via phone. So part of the question actually was lost.
Okay.
But my sense is that the decision is just a decision. Its implementation is likely going to face quite a number of challenges. One of the challenges that I think we need to avert our minds to, because if it doesn't happen, the intervention cannot take place. It is a question of obtaining the Security Council sanction. Because the intervention falls within the framework of Chapter 7, use of force within the UN Charter. This requires that there must be a vote in the Council, and there must be at least 9 members that vote in support of that action. And out of the 9, all 5 permanent members of the Security Council must vote yes. It is not likely, under the circumstances, given all the information that we have, that Russia will cast a yes vote. Indeed, it's more likely for Russia to veto the whole enterprise. And that is the end of the game. The use of force option by ECOWAS should not take place if ECOWAS wants to be seen to be compliant with international law. So that needs to happen in order to encourage the chiefs to go ahead with the planning that they are doing. However, if that doesn't happen, the only option left will be for ECOWAS to engage through diplomacy and find an exit strategy which invariably will revolve around a transition that involves both the military and civilian elements within Niger. So it brings us back to the playbook that we've seen in Guinea, that we've seen in Mali, and that we've seen in Burkina Faso. However, let's assume for some reason that ECOWAS obtains the Security Council mandate. Then we need to look at the different scenarios as to how easy or difficult or dangerous this intervention is likely to be. I think as we speak, the Nigerian embassy, in Niger is under attack. I think you've just shown it, where seats are being carried and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
When the intervention, this violence might spread to ECOWAS citizens who are resident in Niger. And ECOWAS facilities, i.e. the embassies, other business interests of ECOWAS member states within Niger might all come under attack. That would then create a lot of humanitarian crisis or complexities. So we're going to have more refugees than less. Then, of course, this is going to offset the regional trade, especially around onions from Niger, cattle, goats, and so on and so forth. I am told, and I stand to be corrected, that the oil supply from Niger to Benin, assuming that it's flowing already, is stopped. Nigeria has cut off, power supply to Niger. Niger holds some options in its arsenal, some of which I have mentioned. But Niger can also stop the construction of this gas pipeline from Nigeria all the way to Europe to feed European energy needs. So both sides have options. We must not get the impression that it is only Niger. Yes, Niger will suffer, among others, because it's already poor. I'm told it's about the second poorest country in the world. You see it. But let's also not forget, and I want to make this point, that Niger is not the same as the Gambia. Gambia's case was one around a head of state who was being recalcitrant. This one is about a military coup, the CNSP. On top of that, Niger is facing a state of insurgency. So if you unhinge political stability in Niger, we must expect that the terrorists will then have a free run, increase their hold on Burkinabe territories, and then quickly come into the territories of the Guinea coastal states, i.e. Benin, i.e. Togo, and Ghana, and then link up with Boko Haram, and then run riot. These are the calculations that we need to factor in. We've not even talked about the geopolitics that will turn Niger into a proxy theater. And I think yesterday, assuming that clip that was circulating on social media is right, Russia is likely to intervene through Wagner. And then Wagner or Russia comes into conflict with Western powers. And the consequences are going to be dire. So let's give diplomacy a chance.
Yeah, I mean,
and as I've said,
you talk about giving diplomacy a chance, and that was the question I was asking earlier, that if diplomacy hasn't yielded the results in Mali, Burkina Faso, in terms of getting the junta to hand over power back to civilian rule, to hold an election just yet, ECOWAS looks at that as empowering others like Niger, and therefore fear of contagion is one that is very real to ECOWAS, and that is why they've taken this step. And they make the point that they have to use this, draw a line in the sand, using Niger as an example. Isn't that a justification for this tough stance and the deployment force?
Well, is that question still for me?
Yes, it's for you, yes.
Okay, I didn't hear part of it because the network dropped again. But let me say that the diplomatic option cannot be based on outcomes in 7 days or 10 days. And I can only give the example of Liberia. When Charles Taylor invaded, which threw Liberia into a civil war narrative that Professor Kwesi has mentioned, which is also clearly different from Niger, we started engaging, let's say from January in 1990, and ECOMOG went in August, September 1990. It took 8 months. And even that, the diplomatic option still failed to yield results. From 1990 to 1994, 95, thereabout, ECOWAS thought that it could defeat Charles Taylor's MPFL. It didn't work. So we changed strategy and looked for an exit strategy through elections. So the reason why we have history is so that we learn from history. Of course, we don't know how the situation in Niger might unfold, but it may be very difficult and very catastrophic, or it may be very easy. So we should not jump to conclusion that because within 10 days or 14 days, the CNSP has not engaged, as desired with ECOWAS, it means diplomacy is failing. You see, the optics are also very, very important. And I recall that during our chair of ECOWAS, when we brought leaders from Mali and Guinea here, and we treated them like small boys, I said that if I were those colonels, I would have boarded my plane and gone back. Because no member state has a right to dictate how other member states live their lives. Otherwise, we would have dictated to Côte d'Ivoire how to live its life when Ouattara was changing the constitution, or to Gnassingbé Faure when he was changing the constitution, or to Kampuari when he was changing the constitution, or to Alpha Condé when he was changing the constitution. So you need to treat these, they are the reality. That is the facts on the ground. That is the government of Niger. And you need to now treat them like that, engage them as equals. You see what I mean? And we haven't done that. Okay,
let me bring in Prof again on that point. So we haven't done diplomacy. He also agrees that diplomacy was a second option instead of the first option, and using the military option as your last resort. But Professor Enin, on that point though, do you share in the ECOWAS concern of contagion, which appears to be fueling this approach? And if diplomacy hasn't worked elsewhere, why is there the view that possibly it will work in Niger? Hello, Professor Ini. Hello, Prof.
Yes. Hello. Sorry.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Those of us who are a little bit older, this technology thing, sometimes we forget ourselves.
I understand that.
Yeah. I think the word contagion in this case is the wrong word. And if from the ECOWAS Commission, the assessments and the forecasting are based on the Niger crisis as a contagion, then they are totally wrong. Contagion relates to group action in which individuals are forced or are carried along without being convinced of the efficacy of the group action. If that is ECOWAS's thinking, then what in using the word contagion is that they accept that a number of member states are anti-intervention, but they are being intimidated one way or the other to join. Probably spillover is a better framework to look at it. Okay, so let's clear this. My suspicion is that when Dr. Abdel Fattah Musa used contagion, probably it was in the heat of the conversation, and probably there was a slippage somewhere instead of spillover. Niger is sitting at the crossroads and right at the center of multiple competing, contesting, and sometimes supporting dynamics. I will beg Festus's indulgence. I think in theory, when you intervene in someone's country, the intervening force must have 3 times the firepower and the manpower of the country in which they are intervening. If Niger's army, based on the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's data of 7,000 personnel is correct, taking into consideration the fact that over the last 10 years, the US alone has pumped in close to $500 billion of training, of logistics. The French have done the same. The Czechs and the Turks. What it means, and of course China has put in 4.6 billion. The Wagner Group is hanging around. What it means is that we are going to face an army that is used to fighting in the desert, that is used to some of the finest arsenals, and that is fighting not for constitutionalism, because as Festus has said, the same organization that is fighting for constitutionalism in Niger has failed disastrously in the last 20 years in using the same yardstick when member states have failed. So for the people of Niger, this is a battle for identity. This is a battle for freedom. This is a battle against an invading force. And I want to go back to something that Festus said. When these young colonels were brought to Accra and spoken to as if they were kids, two things happened psychologically that once more ECOWAS hasn't learned from dealing with Charles Taylor. When Mr. Charles Taylor used to be brought to Accra, I always told the negotiating team, the way that Mr. Taylor dresses, the color of his dress, the type of walking stick, and the swagger with which he came down the gangway of the plane told you the state of his mind and how difficult the negotiations would be or how easy. ECOWAS did not learn. When these young boys were brought to Accra, they were ordered to get out because they wouldn't sit with them because they were in military fatigues. They then changed into natty suits, and look at them, they have now been accepted. They are now equals. When they left the conference center, they were not driven to the airport. They were driven to see the late J.J. Rawlings. And you can Google the advice Mr. Rawlings gave them publicly. So the optics are key. Forecasting is key. Doing risk assessments are key. And doing a psychological profiling of the people that you are going to talk to is very important. That gives those who are negotiating on behalf of ECOWAS to know that if Evans is in this natty dark suit, then this probably is how he's thinking. We are failing in the Niger case catastrophically, as we have failed elsewhere.
How can ECOWAS pull back? How can ECOWAS pull back, considering that they've already taken this step? They've gone really far. They're meeting to draw a plan of attack. Yeah. You say, well, diplomacy. Can they pull back, and how?
They can. If we are sincere about peace and generating the framework and the mechanisms for stability, the chiefs of defense staff, I am sure, will draw up the plan, but have this diplomatic face that they will be seized of the matter, opening an avenue for backdoor channel conversations. My advice is still similar to Festus's. It's negotiation. Backdoor channels in which ECOWAS's face is saved, the meeting of the heads of states and government, that authority is preserved, and then the junta in Niger is also given the opportunity to save face. Whatever it is, if we come to the negotiating table, ECOWAS will come from a position of weakness because it's failed in Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, and it's made even grander statements in which it has had to pull back. Multilateral organizations function when its members voluntarily comply and bind themselves to the rules that they have signed on to. If we take 4 countries that are having coup d'etats, as against those that have not had a military coup d'etat, but have had constitutional coups, what it means is that we are now looking at the credibility and the future sustainability of the ECOWAS project. Niger must be handled carefully.
And there's a prediction, Prof, and I want to quickly pick your thoughts on that this week, that depending on how this is handled, we may actually see 2 more coup d'etats before the end of the year. Is that something that you ascribe to?
Evans, you and I have spoken about this for a long time. If your colleague, Samson, was there, he would have cautioned me, please, no more forecasting from you today. I have moved on from Niger. From where I sit, Niger doesn't intellectually, operationally, emotionally excite me anymore. My interest now is what I've just said. How do we resolve Niger to prevent further destabilization, protect the credibility of ECOWAS, and even more importantly, nudge the heads of states in a direction that protects their authority and the respect that they need on the sub-region. The demographics have changed so much that there is a disparity in the thinking of this 1% elite that has governed since 1960 and the majority of West Africans who do not seem to benefit from the positive sides of democracy and economic liberalization. Niger is known as the frying pan of West Africa. Let us not act hastily.
Yeah.
To make it possible for us to say that we were wrong.
Ken Ofori-Atta, there's a Ghana angle to this that I wanted to close by exploring. As we know, Ghana is expected this morning to host the defense chiefs. What should Ghana do? I mean, we are committed to the project. We have heard from our defense minister say, if ECOWAS decides to go, we'll commit our troops to it. The questions have been asked about parliamentary approvals, but then implications for Ghana, considering that will be placed at the center of this geopolitical conflict, Russia, the Wagner force, and then the West. What will the implications be for us? And what should we do as a strong voice within the ECOWAS bloc if you take away Nigeria?
Well, first of all, I have challenges and difficulties around the defense minister's statement. But when he spoke, and since he spoke, we have not heard from the president. Defense ministers don't declare war. It is the president who should have first made a strategic statement indicating the orientation of Ghana, subject to an outcome of a debate in parliament. See, presidents declare war, but they must go to their legislatures for sanction. That hasn't happened. And I think the sooner we did that, the better. I don't think we expect that the mistake or otherwise, the lapse that we made with regards to Gambia or the Gambia is going to be repeated. I think we should rather correct it. We must seek parliamentary approval before we go. Now, Ghana's posting probably is part of the optics to convince our big brother in Nigeria that, as Ambassador Abdul Fattah said elsewhere yesterday, that Ghana is strongly in favor of the intervention option. So giving the platform for the chiefs to meet, although I would have wished that they met in Abuja, where the ECOWAS Standby Force Chief of Staff is located at the ECOWAS Commission rather than in Accra. Now, Accra's options are a bit limited. I hear from other sources that Togo has reservations about the intervention option. So assuming that the intervention goes ahead, maybe Ghana cannot use land corridors through Togo into Benin and then into Niger, or through Togo, Benin into Nigeria and to Niger. Our routes or access will then be the sea or the maritime route, by which we still need to enter Niger or Nigeria, or the air corridor. You see, the planning is only the planning to activate or implement the activation of the ECOWAS standby force. And what really is going to happen is that there is an ECOWAS standby force which derives its legal basis from the 1999 mechanism. And then you go forward to the ECOWAS Complete Prevention Framework of 2008. But on paper, this force is only 6,500. Now, the force ratios that Professor Enin have our minds to, we need 3 times the force of Niger. Now, my estimate of Niger is that the army alone is about 5,000, without counting the Air Force and then counting the gendarmes, which are equally, powerful structures. So we need about 15,000, 6,500 is short on the paper. So we need the numbers. But aside of the numbers, we need a coherent force structure that is balanced, in terms of how it is organized, how it is led, and so on. Then we need the capabilities, the air capability, artillery capability, or combat support capabilities. Then we need now the numbers on the land. It is going to take time to raise these capabilities. And even if we raise them, Evans, it is very, very critical in any war or warlike operation to have an effective mission support or combat service support, i.e. the maintenance of your vehicles, the fueling of your vehicles, the food that they'll eat. Imagine Ghana going. We need to go with us about 90 days supply of what we're going to eat, whether it's Gary or whatever it is. Then we need a medical support. Well, it's crucial. Some of us, when we get into that desert landscape, which we don't have, all of a sudden will exhibit upper respiratory, symptoms, some out of fear. And I realized this in Ekomok, for instance, that 1 or 2 of my men fell ill, not because they were ill, but because of where we had deployed them on the border with Sierra Leone, in the jungle. So that kind of syndrome, the isolation, the fear that you're going to die, will be telling on these troops. We need to find the money to pay them because we've set a precedent that this is not a peacekeeping operation. But I'm sure that we'll apply the peacekeeping model, and then we need to establish allowances to pay them. Where is this budget going to come from under our current IMF, imposed limitations or restrictions? So these are things that I think all of us, not necessarily Ghanaians, but all ECOWAS citizens must apply their minds to. The options are a bit dire. And giving diplomacy the chance doesn't mean that, of course, ECOWAS's image will be tarnished. But didn't Obama draw a red line in Syria's sand? And Syria crossed it, and Obama didn't respond. It happened. In Liberia, we struck about 14 agreements before we finally brought it to an end. 14. Ceasefires, cessation of hostilities. Accra has about 3, Akosombo, Abuja, Cotonou, all of these. So the lessons of diplomacy show that it is not a very, quick fix. That because you are engaging diplomatically, all of a sudden you achieve results. Let's come back to the diplomatic option because it is a less costly, less riskier, and it is the one that is likely to succeed, giving an exit strategy that is admissible, acceptable to all parties, i.e. Niger and ECOWAS. It is not about saving face. It's about saving lives and saving the integrity of ECOWAS. Indeed, in my scenario modeling, which I did very, very hurriedly, somebody commented that the option of the Bakhmut scenario should be, labeled the Great Sahelian War. And I think Professor has alluded to that by saying that Niger is a frying pan. Niger is likely to turn, the situation in the Sahel into one that no stakeholder will be very comfortable with.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. And the verdict is very, very clear. And today we'll see how this chiefs meeting in Accra, the defense chiefs meeting in Accra, what they conclude and how then takes us forward to actual deployment on the ground. Ken Ofori-Atta, thank you very much, and Professor Kwesi Enin as well. Grateful, always a delight talking to you. He's the Director of Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. You also listened there to Ken Ofori-Atta, who is author, conflict and security analyst, consultant on UNAU joint planning for AUP support operations, UNDP consultant as well, helping us navigate this. When we get clarity on what the chiefs have decided, pretty sure you will know here on Joy News. I'm going to take a break. When I return, we are getting into our next conversation. We are going to be talking about the Bank of Ghana. And as you may know, the Bank of Ghana has been in the news for all the wrong reasons in the last few weeks. And it borders on this report that was published showing a 60+ billion loss on its books. The governor and his two deputies have been giving an ultimatum, a 21-day ultimatum by the minority for them to resign or they will occupy the central bank. But over the last 24 hours, we've had the IMF explain, agreeing with the central bank that the hole that we saw, that loss, is largely down to the domestic debt exchange, 53 billion series of that. And so where's the justification to ask them to go? Stay with me. My guests will join me for a conversation right after this.
The government of Ghana has so recklessly mismanaged the central bank and brought it to its knees and cannot remain at the helm of affairs of the bank without being held accountable.
Your own person, unique, one of a kind, special. That's why you deserve everything tailored to suit your particular taste, your preference, your needs. Just like MTN Just For You. You can get customized offers tailored to who you are. Dial *141# or use the MyMTN app to get to choose from a variety of offers made just for you.
Vampire way, they like sunlight.
Oh my guy, my eyes behind the PC problem. In the sun problem. Common light bulb stuff.
This no matter. I beg go Robert and Sons. Oh yeah, then my chick to him, I know correct. Where Robert and Sons sort them out sharp. Now so stylish frames in the wrong.
We go Robert and Sons right in. No, I was sitting inside proper.
For over 25 years, Robert & Sons continues to provide specialist eye care for both adults and children. Locate us at Adabraka, Adenta, Kumasi, Usudankwa, Tema, Weja, and East Legon. Call 050-151-9111. Robert & Sons, seeing is believing.
My way insurance, send my way,
my name is Nanama McBrown, and I want to encourage you to dial *165# on MTN to join the My Way family. My Way provides you and a selected family member a cover against death. As a policyholder, you will also have a cover against total permanent disability and hospitalization should you be hospitalized for more than 2 nighs. Dial *165# and join the family. Sanya My Way. No way.
My Way is a product of My Life and MTN Momo. Terms and conditions apply.
Joy 99.7 FM. Joy 99.7 FM.
And tested to ensure baby and mother are well. Let us work together to have an HIV-free generation.
Our children must be free to shine.
Number 1 from here, 2 and 3 from here, 5 and 6 from here, for now. Now, I have the number 7, 8, and the number 9.
You need number 10.
Please, I can't eat anymore.
I mean, number 10, liver salt.
The effective liver salt for the relief of stomach upset, heartburn, hyperacidity, and indigestion.
Would you like to try number 11?
What? JJ.
Number 10 liver salt. Refreshing relief, fast. Manufactured and distributed by Ernest Chemists Limited. This advert is FDA approved.
My name is John, and this is my long-time crush. My cookie dipped in strawberry yogurt. On this scorching hot afternoon on our way back from a long job hunt, we met this good Samaritan who offered us a ride.
6 weeks later,
big night to Shania, special wedding reception for our bride and groom.
And there she is, my cookie, dipped in someone else's yogurt.
Don't be like John, who holds the mullah, calls the shot. Play game by games, the easiest lottery to play and win. It's 4 numbers from 0 to 9 up to 3 times daily to become one of our daily lucky winners. Dial *946# to play now. Or you can also play online at www.gamepackgames.com. Game Park is regulated by the National Lottery Authority.
Pascal's showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that the wells can store many, many messages. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded your contact center yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Daddy, this tank is big.
Yes, that's true.
It can store a lot of water.
That's so true.
Wow. It has a working tortoise on it.
That's so true.
I can see S-I-N-T-E-X. Syntax.
That is so true, my daughter.
But it falls down, it will spoil.
That's not true.
But why?
Why?
Syntex was the first to introduce double-layer tanks in Ghana. Syntex again was the first to introduce white inner layers in Ghana. Syntex gives you the biggest warranty, 7 years. No matter your water needs, Syntex is the answer. Syntex tank. Are you strong? Are you tough?
For decades, we have helped businesses connect with their trade partners all over the globe. From Ghana to Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Senegal, China, Morocco, France, Netherlands, and many other countries. We have made it possible to bring Ghana to the world. We have brought small and medium businesses closer to their customers across the regions in Ghana with our SME support facilities. We have brought relief and smiles to the faces of families with our employee personal loans. With our cutting-edge technology and digital support, we take the burden of complex thinking off you, making life simple. That is who we are, as close as a partner. Bank of Africa. We are indeed the African bank with the global reach.
Betway is your gateway to a theme park full of gaming excitement. A whirlpool of wonder where your favorite games come to life. Where you can take to the skies with max payouts that reach into the millions. All in the palm of your hand. Visit betway.com.gh. Terms and conditions apply. Betway is regulated by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. No under 18. Bet responsibly. Betway. Bet your way.
Hi, good day. Yes, I'm Dr. Victor Nana Dankwa because every big Dan healthcare. A private bed and comfort hospital like catch up someone your liver and kidney related conditions. Obi on my so fatty liver. Obi on my catching so when your hydronephrosis. Obi on my catching so when your pyelonephritis, which is inflammation of the kidneys. Obi on my catching say the kidney so be a big now. Obi on my send the creatinine and I send the JFR. And until we so how now sit me tatai. I feel don't send me an atom. Johnson now be Johnson, who was a phone be about training. Kawakuma to him. And until now, Big Dan Healthcare, Yabase, yet no alternative way so ever so yare.
So over Big Danka, it was serene environment with ultra modern facilities. As I was share your there was Painters, Coca-Cola Runabout, close to Fidelity Bank, Stanchart Ichironuma.
No way pass the tape and declaring plastic and M1. And then now, with them, they are against you. As I can introduce you DBS Lifestyle Gauge Trusses amount. They say, baby, I say, Yama minimum aircraft the day. And you know, you do dance. And no crow, no sending me a benina and a papa. So DBS Lifestyle Gauge Trusses. They the computer not generated. It's a Nadian goes for a straight. And if it's a Nadinti, they want to mean the enemy. A good answer, I feel more musicians saw that. More music factories, and as a dark is a piano. Me recommend DBS Trusses. DBS Trusses. We need to.
Joy 99.7 FM.
On News File, just gone by, we've talked about the situation in the ECOWAS sub-region, the situation in Niger that is triggering brought us to the brink of war. I'm talking about ECOWAS. The defense chiefs are meeting in Accra today, or they're expected to. We'll know the outcome pretty shortly. And let's get into a conversation now about the Bank of Ghana. And it's been a major story in the last week indeed, because of the report that we saw that talks about the big 60 billion loss that they've now have on their books, making them extremely weakened. And if you look at it, really, they have negative equity as well. In essence, they are broke. But they are building a $250 million office that is raising a lot more questions. Let's bring in our panelists to weigh in on that. Dr. Tue Champon is a political risk analyst and an economist. He's going to join us via Zoom for a conversation on this. Toma Amehe is a financial analyst and a consultant. Also joining us is Enusa Fuseni, is a lawyer and former MP for Tamale Central and former Minister of Roads and Highways, and he's here with me in the studio. Martin Kpebu is lawyer, is on Zoom. Richard Ahiagba is the communications director of the New Patriotic Party. They will also stay when we discuss the Cecilia Dapa matter just before we end News File today. But let's start with the BOG, shall we? Do we have Dr. Tue Champon on or Toma? Okay. Let me bring in Martin first before I come to the politicians in the studio. Martin, so I'm pretty sure you familiarize yourself with the report that we saw with the BOG. There's a lot of conversations around the loss. We've seen an explanation, which is DDEP. The IMF says yes, it is DDEP that created that loss. 53 billion of that amount that we saw is down to that alone. really, are we not being a little unfair with the BOG on this matter, considering the economic circumstances we found ourselves in? The IMF says we needed them to be the shock absorbers, paraphrasing here, so that the rest of the financial system will be stable and not collapse on us. Where do you stand on this conversation?
Well, yes, Evans, we are dealing with BOG fairly to the extent that we are asking the governor and the two deputies to resign because they've been co-architects of this, our economic hardship. Yeah, Dr. Addison and his two deputies are co-architects of this economic hardship that we are facing. The time they were printing 35 billion for the government in 2021, didn't they know that it will have repercussions? The time they printed 45 billion for the government in 2022, didn't they know it will have repercussions? And this one, the IMF shouldn't have stepped in this way. They don't really have to come in. Otherwise, it's like they're just getting the line of fire. When I saw the IMF statement, you know what? It took me back to the 1980s, 1981. You know, when ex-President Manley of Jamaica suggested to Thatcher, Reagan, and co. that, look, we should set up a UN bank that can lend to developing countries on better terms than this IMF. On better terms than this IMF. Thatcher told us, you know, because Manley got troubles, you know, well, actually, the one side of the history shows that the CIA supported Edward Saga to win the election. So Manley lost the election. 1978, he did a mini conference on this matter. Then by 1981, just a year before the main conference on this, getting IMF out of the way so that we'll have a UN bank that will deal with this on better terms. It is said that CIA supported Edward Saga to win the Jamaican elections. That's how Manley was taken out. Then once Manley was taken out, Reagan and Thatcher were free. So when the Ghanaian government tried to push, so with Jamaica taken out, it was now left with Tanzania and Ghana that pushed Reagan and Thatcher. Oh, it was easy to just ignore Ghana and Tanzania on this matter. So IMF should be the last institution to come and support Bank of Ghana on this matter. We had over, 40 years ago, it was saying that their own structures and all that are not good for our development. Yet, because they want us to continue to be impoverished, they are not interested in properly helping us to change our structures. They kept IMF to continue to lend to us in such a manner that we will never get out of this our poverty. So I don't want to hear IMF on this particular matter at all. They should go back to the history. Look at what Reagan and Thatcher said. Thatcher said she's not interested in a UN bank that will have majority, because developing countries were in the majority, countries that were living on overdrafts being in charge of the UN bank. You Google history, you'll find it. Yes, that's what she said. She can't bring British taxpayers' money.
Martin, on this specific matter, though, I mean, the facts are the facts, right? Because if you take 60 billion, which really is the headline story on this matter, and 53 billion of that is down to the domestic debt exchange, which is not the creation of the central bank, then at least it puts that in perspective, does it not?
No, it doesn't at all. Listen, Evans, it doesn't. So let's go back to the second argument. So that's why I said that when Bank of Ghana was giving government 35 billion in 2021, didn't they know it will have consequences? When they gave government 40 billion in 2022, didn't they know it will have consequences?
But the argument is that without that, the economy would have collapsed. The government was struggling. The international markets were close to it. They needed that money.
No, it wasn't going to collapse.
Okay, let's.
It wasn't going to collapse.
Stay with me.
We created it.
Stay with me, Martin. I want to bring.
Wait, let me land.
Okay.
So, one sentence.
Yeah.
On the law, the 5%. So the law, the Bank of Ghana Act 612, as amended by 918, says that don't exceed 5%. Central bank shouldn't lend to government beyond 5% of the previous revenue, that's revenue raised in the previous year. And when you want to exceed it, report to Parliament. Look at subsection 6. The Bank of Ghana report to Parliament. At least they could have leaked it. Like, this book, Condoleezza Rice's book, No Higher Honor. In the US, when there are matters like this and it's critical, national security being involved, and of course the economy is national security, there's a way you leak it. In the US, the State Department, they do it. It's constant. Democracy and leakages, they go together. If they had leaked it in a way, then the public would have come in. So Addison and his 2 deputies are co-architects of our economic doldrums. We are starving. We can't buy food, we can't pay rent, we can't pay school fees because of Addison, Ofori-Atta, and Akufo-Addo, and they all must resign en bloc.
Okay, so as far as the law is concerned, you are categorical that there was a breach of the law?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But it doesn't matter that Ofori-Atta went to Parliament, that he doesn't want, he's taken away under the fiscal discipline, they want to exceed 5%. No, the Bank of Ghana report to Parliament. The Bank of Ghana report to Parliament. That's the question.
This week, though, the minority held a press conference with a lot of talk around the subject. Listen to a few of those clips, and I will come to a studio.
Recklessly mismanaged the central bank and brought it to its knees and cannot remain at the helm of affairs of the bank without being held accountable. Those who have led this reckless and criminal conduct unleashed economic hardship and financial distress on the suffering people of Ghana must be held accountable on this particular action. In fact, impunity of the highest order can no longer be tolerated by the suffering masses of Ghanaians. We must not allow this dangerous precedent to be set for future leaders. In this regards, we in the NDC call for the immediate resignation of the governor of the central bank and his deputies within 21 days from today. We are resolved to embark on popular action to occupy the central bank and drive out the team of inept, callous, and criminally minded mismanagers of our finances to save the Bank of Ghana.
The Bank of Ghana governor and anybody hold accountable is the Attorney General. But which of you here believes that Godfrey Dami is going to prosecute any member of President Akufo-Addo's government? It's not going to happen. But I can assure you that apart from the fact that the governor fears appearing before Parliament, in fact, he doesn't even like appearing before the Finance Committee of Parliament. He thinks he's only accountable to President Akufo-Addo. And the last time we needed to remind him that even the Finance Minister, upon all his escapades, is forced sometimes to appear before Parliament. So if the Finance Minister is bigger than you, how dare you not be able to appear before Parliament? Let him understand he is accountable to Parliament. And the 21 days is a long grace period. Which of you will believe that a Bank of Ghana in this level of crisis, self-inflicted, will be building a $250 million new headquarters? In fact, those of you who know Ridge Hospital, when President Mahama had the opportunity to lead this country, he built Ridge Hospital that you and I can use today. Right opposite of that hospital on the right-hand side is Bank of Ghana new headquarters, as if something is wrong with the old headquarters. You are broke, you have actually collapsed the economy. The next thing you do is to award a $250 million project. And guess what? That project is one of the fastest going projects in this country. Not hospital projects, not education projects, not road project. The fastest going project in this country is the construction of Bank of Ghana. So how can you tell us that the country is broke?
In the years past, we noticed some cracks at certain parts of the building, and the bank did a structural integrity assessment so that it was no longer fit for purpose and could not stand major earth tremors. That building has been in residence since independence, and that's why management saw the need that once we realize that our building may be under threat and will put the lives of people in danger once something drastic happens, then they put measures in place to ensure that we put up a new building. It was all started last year anyway.
When was it started?
I think it was started about 2 years ago in 2021. But it has been on the drawing board for a long time.
2020 or 2021?
I think the construction started in 2021.
In 2021?
Yes.
How much is the Bank of Ghana committing to that project?
I don't have the figure offhand, sir.
The figure for your headquarters?
I don't have the figure off my head, sir. That's what I'm saying.
$250 million. Are you committing $250 million to that project?
I don't have the full complement of the figures.
Mr. Randolph, you are the Director of Finance of the Bank of Ghana. This is a major project that will shake the balance book of every organization. You should have that figure of head.
This project has been on the drawing board for more than 4 or 5 years. Once you have been told that where you are sitting has structural problems and we don't know what may happen in future, you will take steps to ensure that you save life and property. Respectfully, sir.
So there we have it. My guests in the studio will have a bite at that very quickly. And as you know, we have in the studio with me Yusuf Husseini, is lawyer and MP for Tamale Central, former minister, former MP. He wants me to emphasize that because he says he's enjoying retirement. Also with me is the Director of Communications for the MPP, Richard here. But Thomas May here is a financial analyst and consultant, joins me now. Let me take a quick thought from him before I come to the studio. Thomas, so we've seen the losses. We just talked about the 250 million offers. But if you go back to the loss, which is the big deal, inevitable considering where we are where we were as an economy, where we still are, and how the Bank of Ghana had to step in and take the shock on behalf of everybody else. Hello, Thomas?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, good.
Thomas, can you hear me?
I'm here.
Okay, let's come to the studio whilst we fix that the challenge right now. But let me come to you, Richard. Richard, we just listened to that clip there. The conclusion by many is that if you listen to 250 million on a project like that, it says it started in 2021. That is at the height of the economic crisis, the height of COVID. The BOG has simply been imprudent. I don't know.
Well, Evans, thank you very much, and thank you to my senior. I haven't seen him in a bit now. And good morning to viewers and listeners on the radio. I was looking for a document. I think I'll find it. You see, the NDC's conversation on this subject is welcome, and I think that ordinarily we should engage to see that public institutions are being very prudent in terms of their utilization of whatever power we've given them and the resources that is available for them to spend on those ventures. But we who are in the space to engage the subject matter must also be circumspect. And on the particular issue, and I think you're letting us focus on the headquarters building alone. That's really what you're having us do. It's a subject matter that I think that the NDC must be very much aware. Most particularly the former Deputy Minister for Finance, Akufo-Addo, because he was a member of the board when the Bank of Ghana board, at the point when they were in government. And this conversation about building a new headquarters for the Bank of Ghana didn't start today. It's a conversation that started way back in the 90s, where the Bank of Ghana decided or had an idea to build a whole new place because where they were staying, where their current location has been caught up with development. So the discussion to build a new headquarters started way back. And I mentioned Mr. Akufo-Addo because he was part of the board that was looking for a parcel of land to buy for this particular purpose when he was there as a board member of Bank of Ghana. To the extent that there was a company or an individual that brought them or showed them a parcel of land near the Achimota Forest. And I'm singling out when he was part of the Bank of Ghana board. And the individual was offering that piece of land for 2.5 million per acre. Mr. Dr. Akufo-Addo was part of the board. So it has been an ongoing conversation, and they committed to buying that 20-acre land at $2.5 million an acre. And their commitment, they were committed, the board actually issued a directive for them to proceed in negotiation.
Did they actually buy them?
So it got to a point they had to pull out. And in pulling out, there was a settlement cost of 1.2 million paid to the individual.
But bottom line, they didn't go ahead with
But I'm telling you that it's a financial loss that is occasioned just by the interest. Now, even that is not my focus, right? My interest here is that the conversation to build that headquarters.
But hold on. But from what I understand, the government then actually rejected the idea of buying the land at that time because of the cost involved. When it was first moved to.
Yeah, and that is not even the first time.
Because he was a government rep on it, he would have led the opposition to the purchase.
No, that's not even the subject matter. The idea is that the conversation of building that precedes this governor, and it started way back in the 90s. And I can go through a chronology of efforts. There have been about 3 different procurement processes to get a land.
But you are actually spending.
Hold on.
So that
Evans, you should understand this, that there is an understanding by the Bank of Ghana that predates those who are in office now, a commitment to build a new place.
But if that's true, considering that, just put it in context, the NDC2 also had their own economic challenges in 2013, 14, 15.
Right.
They could have built that.
That's not a
the plan was there before.
That is not a material point. The material point is that.
But they chose not to.
Hold on. It's not as if they chose not to. They just haven't gotten the land where they want to build it. Right? So had the agreement, the board issued a directive that pursued this 20-acre land near the Achimota Forest, and they took step. Akufo-Addo was part of that board, and they took step to purchase it. Okay, and part of some due diligence which had happened in the previous procurement processes prevented it from going on. But in this exceptional case with Akufo-Addo on the board, there was a damage that he had to pay to the person who was offering the land to sell. About $1.2 million was lost to Ghanaians. Now, that is to paint a picture to say that the building of the Bank of Ghana was not something that started yesterday, in which case, 2021, in which case you would say that, why would they, out of the blue, start building a Bank of Ghana headquarters?
The question is about if what you're saying is a fact, that it didn't start now, it predated your government, it predated the NDC's last government, why spend the money now? Why start to 2021 when, especially with that economic condition that we were facing at the time, why spend it now? Why don't postpone it till later?
But you made a point that in 2015, thereabout, the NDC was in IMF, and the reason they stopped, they couldn't build it is not because they thought that we had an economic crisis, right? But they didn't get it, they didn't build it because they couldn't resolve the land. And under this administration, I think in 2021 or so, they were able to procure land through a government instrument. So they were not going to pay $50 million for 20 acre.
But Richard, this is a simple man in the street question to you. You're saying that you inherited the plan to build.
Yeah.
2021, height of our economic crisis, right? I mean, getting the COVID was telling us everything was going to go haywire into the economy. You're saying to the ordinary person, at that time, when you're coming out of COVID you're about to leave and COVID was telling you the economy was going to collapse and you're in crisis, is the right time to spend $250 million on an office building?
Evans, I can't answer that question for you, but the point I was trying...
No, it's a simple question. Was that the right time to do... Consider you inherited the plan.
Listen.
Was that the right time to spend the amount of money on an office block?
I am not the board of Bank of Ghana. If you're asking my personal opinion, I don't think it matters. But I'm trying to illustrate.
You don't think it matters they're spending 250 million?
I'm saying that if you're asking my personal opinion, I don't think it matters. I'm not the board. Whatever informs the decision. But I'm trying to illustrate for you a narrative that gives you an impression of a project that the bank has to undertake that dates back into the 90s, that we need to build a new headquarters for us, which project the Bank of Ghana has been pursuing up until a point, right? So almost, if you look from the 90s,
up until the point where
they actually got the land,
but also up until a point where we're facing our worst economic crisis in the generation.
No. See, if you begin to argue along those lines, then you're actually nitpicking, because really in 2015, when the NDC had that challenge with the IMF, they were still proceeding with getting the land anyway. The only thing that stopped perhaps them going ahead to build it was how the acquisition of the land
you've made the
didn't
point.
go through.
So stay with me. Let's put
let me just conclude for you. I just wish that you allow me to flow.
On the building, because that's not the substantive matter. I wanted to clear that.
Just allow me just to flow, because the interruption is too much. The point I am making is that
on the building.
Yes, on the building, to say that the bank has a project to build.
Yeah, but you've made that point.
That point is significant. That's the only point to make.
Yeah.
For you to understand that they didn't just wake up yesterday and say, now we have arrived, we want to get a land, we want to build. It's an institutional decision to move. And so that movement, every leadership that came was committed to getting that dream realized. So this Bank of Ghana leadership was pursuing what legacy project or legacy initiative for the bank they inherited, and they pursued it. If any case at all, this government, this governor or this leadership actually succeeded in getting a land for the Bank of Ghana to be able to start the process, which is something that they inherited. So we need to put it in context. Now, currently, if we look at the situation we're in and we say that it's not acceptable, we should move on, that is contingent upon the present analysis that we'll make. But the question to you is that had we not incurred this 53.1 billion debt, would we be having this conversation?
Okay, stay with me. Let me bring him in. So his point is, this was, and just dealing with the office complex investment that BOG is making. We'll come to the loss, the bigger loss subsequently. The plan was there. You committed to it at your time. All governments inherited it. But you also actually moved in terms of trying to get a land. In fact, he alleges that it was a financial loss incurred. And they simply went ahead with a project that all government before them had committed to do. So what's the big deal here?
Well, let me, first of all, thank you so very much for having me on your platform. And to Richard, I've not seen him in a while.
Yeah.
First of all, Richard and Evans, you must understand that we are talking about a bank which owes fiduciary responsibility to the people of Ghana, because that is our bank. And so decisions taken by the bank, especially investment decisions, must be taken prudently. And they ought to be accountable for those decisions. No one says that, or no one is saying that they conceived the idea of building a bank in 2017. No one has said that. But building the bank in 2021 at the height of our economic and social crisis, was it a prudent decision? That goes to show that the bank has been so mismanaged that the managers of the bank have not exercised prudence in their decision making. And that has led us to the situation in which we are.
It has to be built sometime.
It has to be built. Yeah. So in 2000, before NDC handed over, NDC built a hospital. So no one is saying that the Bank of Ghana cannot build. But how did they build the hospital? They built the hospital from the profits they had made. And so they decided to invest part of the profits in building the hospital. You don't make a loss of 60 billion Ghana cedis and have a negative equity of 55%. You know what negative equity means?
You mean you're broke.
It means that you are not having 50% loss in equity, You are not having 100% loss in equity. You are having more than 100% loss in equity. That is minus 55. You are so deep in the hole that you are still found money to invest in building the hospital.
I think, but I'll check with Tom. But this report we are talking about is a 2022 report. So at the time that they were committing to build 250, so did they have this debt on their books?
So the project is ongoing.
Yeah, but if they already
the project is ongoing
in 2021. Yeah. If they had done a budget for it,
if you know Project Life, there's a budget for it.
Yes.
That budget and the project has got a gestation period.
Yes.
And the project is still ongoing. In the current crisis in which we are, the project is still ongoing.
But you already would have devoted.
They have not devoted.
No,
budget doesn't mean
that if you had a crisis, you say you stop the project that you've already budgeted for and secure.
You are talking to somebody who has implemented.
Government projects and bill rules.
Government projects and knows about contract administration. They don't earmark funds for building a project. It is a rolling budget. Every year you are going to put money into the project. Over a period of time, you expect to amortize or complete the project within a certain period of time. It's not that the money is sitting in the bank. If the money were sitting in the bank, they won't have a negative equity of 55% for 2022. It's not so. You need to understand. And I'm saying that at the time that they started the building, no reasonable bank manager would have committed to investing in the project when we were still suffering the ravages of COVID.
And all the projections said.
And the projections just showed that the economies were going to slow down. No reasonable person. When countries were taking steps to protect the economic fundamentals of their countries, you are thinking in investing in your comfort. No, that shows that's evidence of the incompetence and mismanagement of the leadership of the bank. You don't do that. And I'm surprised that you say it doesn't matter. And if you were a private investor, you are struck by difficulty. You have plans to build a new house. Wouldn't it be prudent on your part to wait until your situation improves? You don't think that it's prudent? You don't think that it doesn't matter?
But see, I don't think
I'm so disappointed that you say that. You said it doesn't matter.
No.
You said your private opinion doesn't matter.
Yes. Because
and I'm surprised because you are talking as a Ghanaian.
About it doesn't matter.
You are a shareholder in the bank.
No, please.
You are a shareholder in the No. Please.
I haven't said.
Please let me tell you that you are a shareholder in the bank.
I do know that, but I haven't said.
You don't know that. If you knew that, you wouldn't say it doesn't matter.
Well, no, your attribution to me, I don't think.
Okay, you don't know that.
If you need me to clarify, I'll clarify.
No, you don't need to clarify. Everybody heard you.
No.
How can you say that? You're not angry enough that people who were put in trust of our bank have so mismanaged and damaged the bank that you tell me that, and you tell Ghanaians that it doesn't matter. No. I'm so disappointed in you.
I am disappointed.
I'm so disappointed.
I'm disappointed in you.
How can you say this?
Is it worse that you are
No. How can you say this?
Then we say this.
How can you say that?
I am
How can you say that?
We'll say that second.
That is the reason why. That is the reason why we have gotten to where we are.
Yeah, Mr.
That you can make statements that it doesn't matter.
A second.
Yes.
You remember when you passed the comment? You're not the BOGs. Yes. You're not the board.
Yes.
But left to you alone, it doesn't matter.
No.
I asked you. Please. You say it doesn't matter.
Hold on. You asked me a question about a board decision to invest in a project
at the time of economic crisis.
Yes. And that project we are talking about. And you asked my opinion, and I said my personal opinion would not matter because there's a decision already taken.
Okay, so
if they are the point of making the decision,
so your opinion didn't matter.
You're
not commenting on the prudence of the decision.
No, I'm saying that you're asking my personal opinion on a matter that is already.
Does that offer clarity?
No, it doesn't offer.
No. Listen,
it goes to compound the situation that Richard has divorced himself.
No, please.
As a Ghanaian from
But
the requirement of accountability and responsibility.
If you exercise some restraint, you can understand what we're saying.
Well,
wait.
I'll come to Richard.
No, let me listen. This is serious. Otherwise,
but you've clarified.
No.
Let's clarify.
I need him to understand.
No,
really.
but you're not addressing him. You're addressing your audience.
But he's attributing something to me I don't accept.
But you have to clarify.
No, let me contextualize.
It didn't matter.
Because you ask him whether or not he's satisfied, and he said,
but
you should have asked him if he thought it was important. You shouldn't have asked him.
I'm saying you've clarified.
Give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute.
Take it.
The structure is clear. That the decision to build or not to build belongs to the board of Bank of Ghana. Whether I'm a citizen who has an interest or not, I don't influence that decision at the time they're making it. Because we're all here when they make the decision and nobody was called. So they made a decision as a board and they are responsible for it. And so you ask me a question relative to a decision they have already made and they are in motion with that. And you're asking my personal opinion. I said, my personal opinion at this point would not matter. But allow me to comment on what they have done, which is to say that the bank from time immemorial
you've repeated that.
Yes, but it's important for him to understand what is attributing. You should be able to moderate the program.
But that is why
not to attribute
Richard, that is why I came back to clarify, and you've clarified. Yes, a second. I'll come back to you. No, I'll come back. Hold on, Richard. That's why I came back to clarify. But remember, Richard, that you are here as the communications director of the MPP.
Right.
So when I said I'm going to ask you the ordinary man's question,
right,
which is 2021, you actually are telling us, because you were trying to say, oh, this was something that was historical, and they inherited it, that in 2021, at the height of COVID, at the height of the economic crisis that everybody was telling you you're going to go to, was it the prudent thing to invest 250 million? I was asking you as a spokesperson for your party. You're saying that was the prudent thing to do. That's the question.
I didn't say that.
But that was a question I was asking you.
Yeah, but
as a spokesperson for your party.
Right, so then I ask you to allow me to establish.
Let me rephrase my question then.
Okay. So you want to re-ask the question?
Yes, because it's important.
Yeah.
As the spokesperson for your party, you are saying to us that the party and yourself, because you speak for them, right, believe that it was a prudent thing to invest 250 million, budget for it, and actually start the project in 2021, height of COVID, beginning of the economic crisis.
If you want me to answer in hindsight, because the facts are before us now. And remember, when I ended my statement, I posed the question, would we be talking about this today, but for the 53.1 billion? You remember I ended that way. So we are having a conversation in context outside of us. That's why I told you.
So you say in hindsight,
hindsight, that's a conversation we're having. In hindsight, it's proper to say that they should stop. But then the commitment has already been made. And remember your own question to him, to say that the commitment of building this had already started. You asked him that question.
Yes,
and then he now went to tell us about his credentials in project management. So you need to be able to situate the conversation that we are not making a judgment on the matter from where we stand, but I'm making an analysis for you that led the bank to commit to build
But importantly, you've said that in hindsight...
So I'm very disappointed.
You say, but importantly, you said...
So we are speaking in context.
Importantly, you said in hindsight, they shouldn't have gone ahead with the project at the time they did, considering the economic...
I didn't say that. There's a critical question that I've asked you.
Yeah, no, but don't ask me a question. I'm asking the question.
It doesn't mean that you have monopoly. It doesn't mean that you have monopoly. I can ask you a question. Which question you all actually asking?
So you're saying that in hindsight,
Evans,
250 million in 2021 for a project like this, considering where we were, wasn't something we should have done.
He says that I have an interest as a citizen in Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
In fact, I have an interest in our democracy, and you are also equal interest. So I can ask you a question, you can ask me.
No problem. Let's move away.
So the point, I need to ask you a question that can really help you clarify your question. The point I want to ask you is that now we have a debt on Bank of Ghana's book now, about 53.1 billion. This building has been going on since 2001. Have you found reason to ask that question up until now? So it's a contextual issue that you understand that, yes, the project was relevant at the time they were doing it. Maybe now we need to re-examine the issues and say that going forward, we will not continue. Okay. I'm not under any illusion. So I am not under any illusion, before my senior come, that the Bank of Ghana board itself will be considering going forward, now that they just recorded this, to re-examine them.
Okay.
So that question belongs to all of us, but in hindsight, we cannot make the decision as though that this should have been seen in 2021.
Okay. But I need to say this. At 2021, when they were doing this, and part of the thing that central banks do is to make projections. At the time, it was very clear that we are facing an economic crisis of historic proportions. That is a fact. Anybody, any economist that will tell you that at that time you could project. They should have known at the time, and that's the view of many, that was not the time. That was not the time to the investment. I know you have quick. I can go to Thomas.
Well, I think that basically maybe Richard communicated in such a way as not to complicate what he wanted to say. And you see, we are not Humpty Dumpty. I mean, you don't mean what you say what you mean.
No.
So clearly,
it's unfortunate.
Clearly,
I give you credit that you will be able to see the context.
I'm allowing him. It's entitled to him.
I agree. But if his opinion is injurious to me,
I will always give you an opportunity to clarify.
But his opinion is very injurious.
I agree with Richard. I agree with Richard that we can't influence a board decision opinion. But I don't agree with him when you say that you can't evaluate a decision of a board.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you can. So if you can evaluate the decision of a board, if you can assess, if you can critique the decision of a board, what Evans was asking you was to assess the decision in the light of what happened.
I think he's answered that. I think he's answered that.
So the consequence of my evaluation is okay. So the project is already there. So my assessment, what is the consequence?
Richard, I think we are making peace.
Yes.
So why are you now?
Proceed.
I'm not. So the question, the simplest question to ask anybody who is conversant with finance and economic planning and the way countries are managed is, was it a wise and prudent decision to start a major investment project by the Bank of Ghana in the middle of COVID? That's the simplest question you ask. And I think that the overwhelming answer will be no, because you will have to wait. Because of your fiduciary responsibilities to the people of Ghana, your shareholders, you will have to wait until the situation improves. Because the Bank of Ghana is not a law unto itself. We, the people, the sovereigns, have decided to establish the People's Bank, and that is the Bank of Ghana. And if the Bank of Ghana needs capital, you and I will have to recapitalize it. So it's our money with which the Bank of Ghana is working. So they have a responsibility under the Companies Code and under their Act 612 to manage the bank prudently. They have that responsibility. And I don't think that the decision to commit $250 million at the height of COVID to build an edifice to gratify their leisure or pleasure was right.
Let's move this conversation along. I want to bring in Tom.
That doesn't mean that the Bank of Ghana cannot invest. In good times, when they are in profits, they can. They can invest.
And let me bring in Thomas into this conversation, because Thomas, a quick one just to clarify. I know you've been studying this. You are a financial analyst and a consultant. Thomas, tell me. So 2021, could the Bank of Ghana had seen clearly what was ahead to make a decision at the time that this was not a prudent investment? But also, this report that talks about the 60 billion is a 2022 report. So again, in 2021, when they were investing, making a decision to put the money in for the building, did they have a loss then, or was the loss reasonably anticipated at the time to say that this is something we shouldn't do?
Evans, they say hindsight is always clearer than foresight. Now, at the time they made that decision, there was no indication that this problem was going to come. All right? This problem started arising in December 2021 when Bloomberg announced the problems we're having with our Eurobond, the way investor confidence had gone down. That time, the decision has already been made. So, I mean, there was no way Bank of Ghana would have known. Now, for me, the bigger issue is that we are looking at the symptoms of an issue rather than the cause. We should be looking at a 5 billion haircut, not a 250 million building. If what happens to the Bank of Ghana in 2022 had not happened, nobody will be talking about this building, or even the expenses that has become an issue, the increase in expenses. Nobody will be talking about this. These are all just symptoms of a problem. We should be addressing the cause. What happened that led us into this situation, where now Bank of Ghana is spending 250 million on a new office and it becomes a national issue. You understand me?
Yeah, I do. Stay with me. Let me quickly bring in Dr. Theo Champon into Dr. Shem. Also, quick bite on that. Evaluating the expenditure, 250 million on the building, as against where the BOG was in 2021 and what was projected as far as the economy was concerned. Prudent decision, or they couldn't afford that?
I don't think so. We were in the midst of a crisis back then, and during that time, in my view, it would have made sense to at least pause that decision, and then subsequently, when things improve, you go back and then you will look at the numbers. But the big point is there are two issues we need to discuss. The deficit financing, or the root cause of the crisis that we're talking about, that leads to the almost $60 billion sort of haircut that the central bank is taking. And then there's another issue which is to do with the bank's own internal sort of operations in that context. And I think that the bigger issue for me is the deficit financing. And there are things that we need to unpack. Because in my view, the Bank of Ghana is behaving like Pontius Pilate in the Bible by basically washing their hands and telling us that, all of this mess and all of this haircut is fundamentally down to the finance minister and the Ministry of Finance. And so they cannot be blamed for the crisis and the challenges that the economy has gone through. And that's where I think substantively we should be debating and, trying to unpack whether indeed that is the case, or whether the bank actually has some, questions to answer when it comes to their management of the economy after the act. Which we cannot discuss Bank of Ghana outside of the context of the act and the mandate that they have. So, the Bank of Ghana Act, this one too, as amended. And they've got two key things. The first thing is to address inflation, right? So price stability, Section 3.1 of the Act. And then 3.2 talks about supporting government in terms of like overdraft and things like that. But the third mandate is always to do with monetary policy, fidelity, and trying to use monetary policy as a tool to address price stability or keep inflation in check in the country. And on that score, if you look at the evidence and all of that, even against the bank's own mandate, it's very clear in my books that they are failed on that mandate. And part of it has to do with the deficit financing aspect of things. So for me, if you look at all of this, and I'm sure it's around, I'm a bit concerned that we are focusing on the bank's operations with this $250 million building or new building. Yes, it's an issue, but the bigger issue for me really is, the issue of the deficit financing.
Talking about the deficit financing, and let's stay there. Let's stay at the core issue here. What do you then make of the Bank of Ghana's own explanation that it is really down to the domestic debt exchange, where they took a 53 billion CD hit? The IMF subsequently also says, yes, largely that was the reason why this has happened. Do you agree that that really is at the heart of the loss that we've seen?
But if you go back to examine what the issues are, why would the central bank be in a position where it's basically become the piggy bank of the treasury? To the point that
Dr. Sorry, Doc, we're having a challenge with the audio. Let's see if we can fix that so we can hear you clearly. We'll try again. Let me bring in Toma into that same because now let's drill down to the real causes of this. We talked about the building. Thomas, we've seen the IMF, explainer talking about the real cause. BOG says, again, it's a reason DDEP. Fair point to make that is really at the heart of the problem.
Evan, look, without the haircut the Bank of Ghana took or the DDEP, all these issues, the experiment would not even have been on anybody's radar. You've been a journalist for so many decades. How many reports have you seen in the media on Bank of Ghana's account? It's because of the lawsuits that were made, and the lawsuits are because of the DDEP. Now, in the case of the DDEP, the Bank of Ghana deliberately took that haircut, because without it, we would not have been able to achieve the debt sustainability conditionality required to get the IMF facility. You understand? Now, as for the losses themselves, for the internal expenses, I will come to that. All right. But what you see here is basically the component of the haircut that the Bank of Ghana took, and that was basically, in fact, they took a larger haircut that they should have taken, but without it, we would not have achieved the IMF conditionality. Because remember that when you look at the entire figures, the haircut that the financial intermediation companies took, and investors took, they only got about 85% of target. Somebody has to pick up the other 15%. And that's what the Bank of Ghana did, because they realized that without the IMF bailout, we will really be in very, very deep trouble. By now, we'll be queuing up for petrol. So we simply didn't have the money to meet our bills. And remember that also we would have been defaulting on our domestic debt obligations as they mature. Right? Even I understand that even paying workers have become a problem. So now you see these things on your graph here. Mm-hmm. When you look at what the graph you have on your TV right now, you see the non-marketable instruments, marketable instruments. These are the things. These are the major things incurred in the haircut, which Bank of Ghana had to take in order for Ghana to qualify for the IMF bailout. All right. The other things, apart from that, the price exchange rate valuation and interest on the cost of monetary policy. These were things that the Bank of Ghana knowingly did in order to try and stabilize the economy, and had to take those hits, combined about 8.5 billion. And those actually, to be fair to the Bank of Ghana, those for the same reason, banks like the Swiss National Bank, Bank of England also took major hits. It was inevitable. Once you have done monetary easing during COVID, and you're now resorting to monetary tightening in order to combat inflation, those hits, the price exchange rate valuation, interest rates on cost of monetary policy, are inevitable. All the central banks around the world took those hits. In fact, other central banks took much bigger hits than the Bank of Ghana.
Okay, I mean, so that is an issue that the IMF also picked up on, and Dr. Tui Champon is rejoined. Hopefully, we can hear him clearer. Doug, the IMF concludes on this, that this hit that the BOG took, as far as the DDEP was concerned, was necessary to, quote, restore macroeconomic stability and public debt sustainability. What do you say to that?
Yes, I hope you can hear me now.
Clearly, yes. Clearly.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I appreciate where the Bank of Ghana, the IMF is coming from in terms of, supporting the broad macro sustainability agenda. I mean, the context is important. The context is that by the middle part of last year, we're getting to the point where Ghana was struggling to close its financing gap. And a lot of the investors have started pulling out, and we saw the run on the CD and all those related things. So in a sense, your central bank became like the measure of last resort, right? But my concern, and the concern other people have raised, really is that even at the time that this crisis was coming, so it is not like we didn't foresee it. We were on your platforms and other ones, and many people highlighted that we were heading into a ditch, so to say. And if you look at even the Bank of Ghana's own statement, they criticized the government by saying, let me quickly find that.
Yes, by saying that the budget of 2022 was expansionary.
It expanded by about 23%, and it failed to address fiscal concerns. That's really the key point right in there. So even the bank and others foresaw this coming. To the point then, from the middle part of last year, they now are pretty much incapacitated, and they are forced to overlend to the government beyond what the government itself said it would need. In July, when the media budget was read, they said that they only needed 38 billion to close the gap. But at the end of the year, the gap now jumped to almost 60-something plus, billion. So the question is, why does the bank sit down and allow itself to be used to finance a gap that is even twice more than the government itself had indicated to us in the media budget? And it comes down fundamentally, for me, again, from where I sit, that the operational independence of the central bank is suspect. It has become pretty much subservient to the broader fiscal policy agenda of the state. And you can look at who appoints the governors and the board of the central bank. Go to section, 8, right, of Article 1.2. It was amended. And if you read that section, the board is the board of the directors. And this consists of, number 1, the governor of the bank, who is the chair. Number 2, the first and the deputy governors. 1 rep for the Ministry of Finance. D, 9 other directors, including a chartered accountant, all of whom are appointed by the president in accordance with Article 70 of the Constitution. Part of the problem is with the way these appointments are made. And so when you look at the solutions, even in what the IMF is proposing going forward, they've got to amend the Bank of Ghana Act 1. But I'm sure one of the things in there will be who gets appointed onto the board. What criteria is used for appointment such that you give them the operational autonomy and the independence to actually address the fiscal policy, the monetary policy decisions. The first thing being fighting inflation, which I said earlier that they have failed on that score when it comes to inflation. And part of the reason why they have failed is because they pumped a lot of money and a lot of overdraft to the government. So in a sense, it ended up defeating the purpose and the mandate of the central bank. The second point is also in relation to defining very clearly what constitutes as an emergency, for which then the central bank can provide certain overdraft or loans or whatever to the government. If you look at the current act, there's a weakness in there. And the weakness in there, in my view, is what has been exploited by the Treasury and forced almost the central bank to lend quite beyond what was even originally budgeted for in the mid-year budget. So you read Section 3, so I think Section 30 onwards of the Bank of Ghana Act, and there are questions in there that clearly defines or talks about the fact that you've got in any year you can lend only about 5% of the previous year's revenues to the government. And further down in Section 30, it talks about that if you want to exceed this, both the governor, the minister, the controller and accountant general, all of them have got to sit down and agree on what the amount would be. And number 2, it's got to be reported to Parliament. And I asked this last week on the show. Show us, or let the people in government show us what steps they took, if any, to indicate to Parliament that 1, the deficit limit or the financial limit from the government, 1, had been reached, but number 2, those have been communicated to the relevant committees in Parliament. I have not gotten any answers, in relation to that. And you can see that here, the domestic debt exchange, all of that, that's the immediate sort of cost. But if you really unpack it, there are some forces and some issues there where the government takes a big or a huge chunk of the role, but the Bank of Ghana couldn't run away and behave like Pontius Pilate and wash its hands and say, oh, we didn't, do, it was beyond our scope. Because those could have, in my view, if the board of the central bank were much more independent and much more autonomous, they could have put a stop to some of the excess financing that we've seen.
And that's a very interesting proposition you make there. Let me put that to the lawyer with us, Martin Kpebu. The Bank of Ghana itself says in their statement, quote, the Bank of Ghana was used to close the gap to enable Ghana meet the debt thresholds that qualify Ghana for the IMF. So they were used. Martin, according to the law, and as Theo Echampo has suggested, what could the Bank of Ghana have done in the case when the finance ministry and the government came to them and say, please, we want to use you to close the gap? Are they allowed to say no?
Absolutely. They are, because as I referred earlier, Theo Echampo, he's done well by referring to the section 36(2)(6). It says report to Parliament. So there's the first part which says that when you reach the threshold, it should be reported to Parliament. I'm looking for it so that we can read it out. Because once you reach the threshold, report to Parliament. So let's read 37. It says, where the total of loans, advances, purchases of treasury bills, and securities made under subsection 1 is 5% of the previous fiscal year's total revenue, the governor shall notify the minister and Parliament of the attainment of the limit under subsection 2. And then it goes on to say the finance minister should also go to Parliament. So why is the notification? As Dr. Theo Echampo, yes, last week you raised it, so we're on another platform, you raised it. That is where we should be holding the governor. I'm telling you that Addison is a co-architect of our economic woes now.
Yeah, I mean, Martin, let me read you something that the BOG in the statement said, maybe in reaction to this. It says, in line with the provisions of the BOG Act 612 as amended, the bank informed the Minister of the Development in its finances. The minister reported this to Parliament as part of his briefing to Parliament on the IMF program and the domestic debt exchange.
No, Evans, at what time? By then, the horses had bolted. And in any event, that doesn't still absolve the Bank of Ghana of its own duty to also report independent. Let's read that part. It says, the governor shall notify the minister and Parliament of the attainment of the limit under subsection 2. Last year, you remember when they did it and the minority got wind that they had printed live sounds, 240 and co led the charges. The government came and denied that no, nothing was done. There was some overdraft, something, then they whitewashed it. So how can Addison be saved? It says notify minister, notify Parliament. Where is the notification? Where is it? And like Addison himself mentioned, you saw an expansionary budget going up 23%, and you couldn't pull the brakes because in 2021 we raised 57 billion, right? So if we raise 57 billion in 2021, why do you give them 45 billion in 2022? Is that 5%? And then if you look at 2020, how much did we raise? The figures I have seen, 2020, we raised 47 point something billion. So why did you give government 35 billion in 2021? It says 5%. If you want to exceed 5% by over 50%, don't you inform our representatives? Don't you? No, Addison is caught. Look, he's caught. Evans, let me add one sentence. The building, I think I have a different take on the building. I asked people who know buildings in Accra, and I got jaw-dropping facts. For the first time, Government of Ghana, BOG, is able to build at a far lower cost than the private sector. I hear this building that's under construction. They are doing just about, it's not more than $2,200 per square meter. That's how these buildings, if you are looking at the cost. Understand the other buildings in the neighborhood, the Zenith one, Stanchart, EcoBank, and Co. They are all above. They are way beyond what government, the BOG is doing. This one is not more than $2,200 per square meter. And these buildings you see, they are going to be, two of them will be 27 floors. Those will be the highest in this country. 27 floors, 5 down, 22 up. That's mega. And that's the central bank. Understand it has many more security features and the rest. So I'm not exactly sure. And I looked at this document. It's called 2021 Property and Construction, Africa Coast Guide. When you go to page 81, yeah, you see the figures. And this is a global analysis that they do. So you see that in Ghana, the average, if you want to build, they say our average shows $2,658 per square meter. Yet this particular building is far cheaper. They say it's not exceeding $2,200 per square meter. So I think we should look at this, the way we are bashing this particular building again. Because the question is that, are we saying the whole of this period we shouldn't build at all? I thought we're building roads, we're building hospitals, and these ones were also stimulating the economy. I will also understand, as I said, I ask people in the property industry, it's led by Ghanaians. The first time ever that Ghanaians are in charge, 27 floors. It's
earthquake resistant.
It's resistant. Earthquake resistant. Green is green. Okay, and then as I said, the Ghanaian factor in it. These are led by Ghanaians. So, and a lot more of other things. I heard very good things. And as for me, the main point I'm saying we should interrogate is that for the first time, a public institution can build at a far lower cost than the private sector, building at not more than $2,200 per square meter, when the average is $2,658. And when comparative buildings in the neighborhood, some did $3,350. So within that range, if you walk some of those high rises you see there, $3,350 per square meter, far higher, more than $1,000 higher than this building. So for the first time, the fact that this is cheaper than the private developers have done, look, I just want to hold back. COVID didn't mean that we were not to do any developmental projects at all. No. What we are crying about is a reckless borrowing, like the attempt to overrun. The speed was too much. It was expansionary. We didn't look at the modeling. Even the Public Financial Management Act says when you are going to spend, you have to model. The budget should be accompanied by
Martin, I need to take a quick break, but when I return, I'll come back to Richard and also hear from Inusa Fuseni, because the Bank of Ghana itself, in analyzing the problem, said a lot about government's old conduct. And I'll pull that to Richard, and I'll get some reactions from Inusa. But also, will the minority go ahead with their Occupy Central Bank? Because as they've said, 21 days for the Central Bank governor to resign. We know in this country that is largely not going to happen, right? So are they really prepared to do that? But the justification, as you've seen, is not really their fault, they've said. Although the suggestion is that they should have stood their ground on the law and said no to them. Could they have done that realistically in the face of the autonomy that they have? Stay with me after this, we'll get into that.
You are your own person, unique, one of a kind, special. That's why you deserve everything tailored to suit your particular taste, your preference, your needs. Just like MTN Just For You. You can get customized offers tailored to who you are. Dial *141# or use the MyMTN app to get to choose from a variety of offers made just for you.
For decades, we have helped businesses connect with their trade partners all over the globe. From Ghana to Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Senegal, China, Morocco, France, Netherlands, and many other countries. We have made it possible to bring Ghana to the world. We have brought small and medium businesses closer to their customers across the regions in Ghana with our SME support facilities. We have brought relief and smiles to the faces of families with our employee personal loans. With our cutting-edge technology and digital support, we take the burden of complex thinking off you, making life simple. That is who we are, as close as a partner. Bank of Africa. We are indeed the African bank with the global reach.
My name is John, and this is my long-time crush. My cookie dipped in strawberry yogurt. On this scorching hot afternoon on our way back from a long job hunt, we met this good Samaritan who offered us a ride.
6 weeks later,
big night to Shania, special wedding reception for our bride and groom.
And there she is, my cookie, dipped in someone else's yogurt.
Don't be like John, who holds the mullah, calls the shot. Play game pack games, the easiest lottery to play and win. It's 4 numbers from 0 to 9 up to 3 times daily to become one of our daily lucky winners. Dial *946# to play now. Or you can also play online at www.gamepackgames.com. Game Pack is regulated by the National Lottery Authority.
My name is Tina. I am a person living with HIV. I got to know my HIV status after I gave birth and lost the child because of HIV. In those days, prevention of mother-to-child transmission services had low patronage due to fear and stigmatization. Today, many HIV-positive women have delivered negative children. I follow the guidelines and take my HIV medicine called ARVs every day, as prescribed by my doctor. This makes me strong and healthy, and also prevent me from passing HIV onto any future child. Please, avail yourself for PMTCT services when pregnant. It is the only way to ensure you do not pass the HIV onto your baby during birth or pregnancy. If you have tested for HIV recently and it was negative, test again when pregnant. If you have tested positive, go to the hospital after birth as directed by your healthcare provider. Your baby will be given medicine immediately and tested to ensure baby and mother are well. Let us work together to have an HIV-free generation.
Our children must be free to shine.
Betway is your gateway to a theme park full of gaming excitement. A whirlpool of wonder where your favorite games come to life. Where you can take to the skies with max payouts that reach into the millions. All in the palm of your hand. Visit betway.com.gh. Terms and conditions apply. Betway is regulated by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. No under 18. Bet responsibly. Betway. Bet your way.
And thanks for staying with us here on Newsfile. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. It's also live on the Joy News channel and across our many social media platforms. Remember that Newsfile is always brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Duraplus, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplus goes, water flows. DBS Industries Roofing, Papa Pen Fie. My Way, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Cherry Tree Properties, we develop spaces as though we're going to occupy them ourselves. Syntex Tanks, it is strong, it is tough, and Flamingo Paints. With me looking at the Bank of Ghana issues, Dr. Theo Champon is a political risk analyst and an economist. Toma Amehe is a financial analyst and consultant. Inus Afuseni is lawyer and former MP for Tamale Central and former Minister for Roads and Highways. Martin Kpebu is lawyer. Richard Ahiagba is a communications director for the New Patriotic Party. And we'll be wrapping up on the BOG, and I want to come to some of the key reasons the Bank of Ghana itself said accounted for the challenge that they currently face. And Richard, if you read the Bank of Ghana's statement, there are a few lines in there that indict the government. For example, it says, as a result of sovereign spreads in Ghana, bonds widen, signaling investor dissatisfaction with the stance of fiscal policy. In other words, they're trying to tell you the problem was staring us in the face. And then he says, the budget for 2022, which was read in 2021, failed to address fiscal concerns, as the budget was even more expansionary by about 23%, with a raft of revenue measures to raise financing. So again, by BOG, they're telling you, you knew the problem was coming, and yet you went ahead with a budget that was expansionary. And then it also talks about how it became very clear, I'm quoting, it became very clear that Ghana was on a path that was unsustainable, and government had to approach the IMF. So the Bank of Ghana itself now is telling you that you failed them, and in failing them, you failed the economy.
Well, thank you very much. I read the same statement, and interestingly, my understanding of it is quite different.
Okay.
Now, the key thing is that in that statement, if you read, I think the Bank of Ghana contextualized that by saying that nobody can talk about a state that it's in without reference to the context in which he has to take those decisions. So if you read that statement, I think it started with that. That to understand where we are, you have to appreciate the context that led to those decisions and ultimately where we are. And so if you do a base assessment of where we are, which is actually even the reason we're talking about the building of a certain structure, and we're saying that is it the right time or not the right time, because we're in a certain economic environment. This, I think it was yesterday, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who works with the RAND Corporation, which is a non-profit organization that does public policy and all that. Actually says that the war in Ukraine has impact on central banks across the world, because it actually led them into making a lot of monetary policy mistakes, because you don't, the predictions as to how inflation was going to behave was very unstable. And so you saw that immediate monetary policy response to the inflation that was induced by the war there, and everything else that cascaded then immediately after the war. But for us, before the war, we saw the 2022 budget that was read in 2021 with revenue measures proposed, anticipating the difficulty, which is what the World Bank, the Bank of Ghana is indicating. So the government anticipated that and was putting measures in place to respond to the revenue expectations of 2022 to be able to mitigate that. But then we saw a protracted debate about that revenue measure in Parliament, such that government, even though the budget was approved, appropriations given, element of the budget that gives government the revenue to fund the budget was held. And up until May in 2022, that was not approved. Now, so if you're a government, then how then do you fund your operations with your revenue, essential revenue measure held in abeyance? So government has had to make certain decisions in 2022. Now, remember, in that same year was when the war happened. I always tell people that if you want to see the growth of this economy, look at after 2020. You saw in 2021, the economy grew. So as a government, you are planning forward, anticipating that things will turn around. From 2021, the last quarter of 2021, the economy grew by 6%. So it gives you a sense of momentum going into 2022. But everything that happened after that 2022 budget read, and the situation we had in Parliament, and the holding of that revenue measure, and eventually, which bastardized it to the extent that that measure still cannot raise any revenue to the tune forecasted, created a problem that you needed to solve. So then, the question I ask people is that, imagine the NDC was in power, and that question they haven't answered, is to say that if the NDC were in power and were faced with that situation, all the situations that I've just described, which you know very well, if they were faced with that situation, what would they do?
Okay, so let me bring him.
Let me just conclude for you.
Just a second.
Okay, so if they were faced with that situation, what would they do? I think they should come and give us the answer. But then to be proactive, government took measures to ensure that the business of Ghana continued.
Okay.
In other words, you couldn't assume everything constant, because you can't hold life, expecting that until that revenue measure comes, no expenditure.
Okay. Let me
government was faced with a situation and it responded to it, but the debt, even that. So then finally, before even in that 2021, Bank of Ghana did not post a loss. Okay, in 2021, Bank of Ghana did not post a loss, even in spite of all of that. The laws we are discussing now are direct function of what we need to do.
I mean, the borrowing was happening at the time.
But then they weren't posting a loss.
Yeah, but it was catching up. I mean, as they say,
but
they just caught up.
They didn't post a loss.
Yeah, no, true. But it just caught up with you the next day.
No, but see, so that's why we need to locate.
Yeah, let me bring in.
We can understand it properly.
I mean, so your party say, and your members in parliament, your former colleagues say they're going to occupy the central bank in 21 days unless the central bank governor resigns. As you've just seen, the evidence is that you cannot entirely blame him. So why is he taking the floor and not the finance minister? Why not occupying the finance minister?
I think that the minority have been very charitable to the Bank of Ghana and the board of directors. They ought to have called for his arrest. There has been a violent and flagrant breach of the Bank of Ghana Act. And the least we expect of public officers is to give fidelity to the law. The law establishing the Bank of Ghana, passed by the Parliament of Ghana, says that the Bank of Ghana can undertake certain activities. It gives a threshold and a benchmark. There are also procedural requirements, all captured in Section 30. Tell me, which of those requirements were followed by the Bank of Ghana? But that is the law, that is the legal framework that establishes the mandate of the bank. Section 67 of the Act says that any infringement of the provisions is an offense, punishable summarily by 2 years imprisonment. So the NDC has been very charitable to the governor of the Bank of Ghana. Indeed, you see, the Bank of Ghana government, and if you want, the finance minister, the presidency, have been engaged in some criminal conspiracy to violate the laws of the country and put us in the situation in which we are. But that's why I've said elsewhere that they establish a criminal enterprise. Why do you think that Parliament, in its wisdom, said that the Bank of Ghana can lend, because that is the lender of last resort, can lend to the Bank of Ghana, but must not exceed 5%? Because even though Parliament was passing the law, Parliament knows, and the people of Ghana know, that excess money supply in the system will lead to inflation. They know. And the inflation will put a lot of people in poverty. Does it come to you a little surprise that the activities of the Bank of Ghana and the government of Ghana led to 850,000 people moving into poverty? So if you are a governor of a Bank of Ghana, to perform your duties in accordance with law, and the law sets up a threshold and a benchmark for you, and you are being used or forced to do some things, your recourse is the law. Point to the law. Because that is the executive. If they think that what you are telling them will not meet their expectations and cannot do the work that they want done, what do? They go back to Parliament under a certificate of urgency and do what? And amend the law.
But what about Parliament itself?
Now, Martin, I just told you that under the law, Section 37 as amended, the Bank of Ghana and the Addison has a responsibility to report to the Parliament of Ghana.
So he didn't do that?
He didn't do that.
Okay.
Why didn't he do it? Was it impunity?
Well, we don't even know yet. I mean, because if it...
No. You need to hold people in public office accountable.
But the question I have, because you're a former member of Parliament, is Parliament has the power, does it not, to get the Bank of Ghana governor to answer these questions? Or under the law, are they allowed to do that?
They're allowed to do that.
So why haven't they done that, and yet they want to occupy? Because that's the legitimate legal process to follow.
So the fact that they want to
get accountability.
The fact that they want to occupy Bank of Ghana does not mutually exclude.
But they haven't said that they will do
that does not mutually exclude them from inviting him to Parliament. And so these are two.
But you think that they will do that first?
Well, whatever they choose to do first. Whatever they choose to do first is not mutually exclusive. Now, first of all, let's all understand that governance is not an easy job. The people don't get elected into office to do only easy things. That if you are spending money and the money is no longer available, you don't go forcing your central bank to give you money to continue to spend. You do what? You reduce the expenditure. This is what governments are elected to do. And so, to connive, conspire, to wreak havoc on the economy and put a lot of people into problems, into poverty and hardship, is an unpardonable offense. That people who have led us into this stage into this situation must be held.
Okay, and I want to quickly wrap up with something that IMF said, and to jump on.
And then lastly, let me just conclude. I mean, IMF, we know that they have passed a vote of no confidence in the Bank of Ghana.
Well,
they've installed an external supervisor.
In fact, what I'm going to read next will answer that question. Dr. Choi Champon, very quickly in a minute, if you want quick reaction to this for me. The IMF says the loss the BOG incurred in the process has contributed to reducing its net equity, etc., etc. We know that, the negative equity that they have. However, it says this does not prevent the BOG from fulfilling its policy mandates and ensuring inflation gradually returns towards its 8% target. Indeed, central bank income is expected to be sufficient to cover monetary policy operational costs. The BOG's net equity is expected to improve significantly over time and eventually return to positive territory. That is the IMF's vote of confidence in the BOG's ability to turn this around. Give me your verdict on this. You share in this very optimistic view expressed by the central bank, very briefly.
It won't happen until there are serious amendments to the Bank of Ghana Act, right? So it's an aspiration, right? And when you read the statement, the first part talked about, them having some sort of confidence in the bank's operational or policy mandate, but without substantive changes to the act that sets up the bank and gives them that autonomy, that independence to make and enforce monetary policy decisions, it's just going to be a wish, and it wouldn't happen, because you go back this inflation argument, right? And as Inisa was talking about, in my view, the banks aided and abetted. The lawyers, can explain that. But they aided and abetted and have part of the high inflation that we're talking about through that extra 60 billion or so that they pumped into, the economy. So if you don't fix what causes the problem, which is that you have to insulate the bank and get them to stick to the dictates of the law that sets them up, and think that going forward, your deficit financing cannot be more than 5%. In fact, in this case, they signed a zero financing agreement, and we knew that for the first 6 months of the year, at least they've largely adhered to that. But in my view, it is not enough, right? These institutional agreements are not enough. It needs to be cemented in law, and we need to amend the law ASAP to address, number one, the financing limit on the monetary side, how you monitor and enforce compliance, including getting the bank to report to Parliament, which is the sovereign representative of the people. And related to that, I think that there should be a parliamentary inquiry on this matter. No two ways about that. But number three, having a very clear definition of what qualifies as an emergency, and under what circumstances can you then lift these impositions. I think all those things need to be done, and they need to go to Parliament. And then the two other quick points related to that in terms of forward solutions. For me, I think that when it comes to who gets appointed onto the board of the governors of the central bank, we should have some institutional representatives in there as part of the non-executive directors. And then the last point for me is that, the Monetary Policy Committee, they meet and they vote, but we don't know the actual voting decisions. And I think it becomes important going forward that all the voting decisions, the people who sit on the MPC and make a decision on the rate hike, we should know who voted for what, when, how. It will all add to improve the credibility of the central bank. And lastly, Richard was trying to deflect a bit of the blame, but at the end of the day, the point is now who caused them, as we say. As far back as April, May of last year, these revenue measures, everybody knew it wasn't going to work, and they came here and told us that it's either EBV and things like that, or even other measures, or we go to the IMF. We all know. We all raise those issues and say, look, you are heading into a ditch. Try and cut back on some of your expenses and try and realign some of those things. They didn't listen. So, they should ask yourself, why is even the finance minister still at play? Because this Bank of Ghana statement is damning. And, what the finance minister did. And I have been on the record as far back as July of last year. In fact, I was one of the first few people on this platform to call for the finance minister's resignation. That still hasn't happened.
Yeah, let me get a quick thought from Toma. Toma, IMF says Bank of Ghana will turn this around.
Let me get a quick thought from Toma. Toma, IMF says...
Hello, Toma?
Turn this around. Well, quickly, Evans. One thing people should take note of is this. Yes, I do concede that the abnormal financing the Bank of Ghana provided government in 2022 has contributed to some issues like inflation. Okay? But remember one thing. Most of the money the Bank of Ghana forwarded to government last year was not to support the size of government. It was for government to meet its maturing debt obligations because the investors were pulling out. Normally, if you look at the debt calendar the government issues every month, every quarter, you find that about 80% of the money taken off the market, the domestic market, is to refinance its existing debt, which is maturing from 91-day treasury bills up to 15-year treasury bonds. Now, what happened last year was that there was a net outflow of investors, especially from the foreign investors who were buying into CD-denominated instruments, which was why we had to run down international reserves by about $4 billion last year. Now, most of the money the government, that Bank of Ghana was giving government, was to enable it to meet its debt obligation, because now people are not rolling over, and new investors were not replacing old investors. And as I said, most of the money that we take off the market is just for that purpose. So Bank of Ghana has to give government the money to avoid a case where they would now start defaulting on domestic debt as they were falling due for repayment. So let's be clear about that. So, I mean, the Bank of Ghana's stance on it was that if you don't give government the money, government will now start defaulting all over the place, which is not good for anybody. That is different from giving it money to support his exercise, which even I am critical of. You know? So that aspect, yes, I'm critical of it. But remember that most of that money went into enabling government to meet its existing debt obligations. How the debts arose in the first place is a discussion for another day. But the fact was that the Bank of Ghana had to make sure that its creditors, that Ghana's creditors were not suffering default on due dates. Then the other thing I just want to comment on is that Dr. Theopong correctly pointed out the fact that going for parliamentary approval for giving extra money to government is based on the meeting of the finance minister, the Bank of Ghana governor, and the accountant general. The law also says specifically that after that meeting, it's the finance minister who has the obligation to report to parliament. It's specific. It's the finance minister who should now go to parliament and say, three of us have met, this is what we have decided to do. Not the Bank of Ghana governor. The law is specific about that. It is the finance minister. So if there's an issue that comes of not following the right process, then it is the finance minister's responsibility. He is the one that caused the failure to follow due process, not Dr. Addison.
Thomas, thank you very much. And that's how we wrap up on this BOG conversation. Let's switch gears now in the next, 15 minutes and talk about that big story that we've been discussing over the last few weeks. I'm talking about the money that was allegedly stolen from the home of the former sanitation minister, Akufo-Addo. The investigations are moving along. This week we've seen and heard about the action taken by the OSP. We're learning a bit more about the work that the police has done too, because they've gone to court this week with a fresh, amended charge sheet, which still states that the amount, $1 million, is the property of the former sanitation minister. Now, I want to come to the studio now on that as we wrap up. Mr. Fusini, I believe you've been following this also very closely. This week, we learned her bank account has been frozen. OSP is doing that. Also, that additional monies were found in the house. When they searched it, we've seen the statement from the AG's office, the advice. We've seen the police amended charge sheet, which, by the way, maintains that the money is property. Where do you stand in all this as this progresses with the investigations happening?
Where do I stand in terms of what?
We see the OSP work that is happening. We've seen the police work, and the big question still remains. The police is still consistent that the money belongs to her. The AG's advice says in her initial statement on the 1st of July, and then followed up with a fourth one, which she actually wrote down, she said, the money, $800,000, is not mine, it belongs to my brother. We've seen the Special Prosecutor's own document before the court, the processes they filed, in which they also referenced that same statement, also that she gave to the police saying it was $800,000. But the police have gone to court with an amended charge.
The facts of the matter are clear. And I've seen some graphics from Joy FM. Yeah. And you put the total amount of money involved in this case at 12.4 or so million.
Yeah, if you put it all together, yes.
All together. And that's what I stand by. What Joy FM is saying, that from all the sources, whether the theft of the 1 million and the 300,000 euro and some amount of CDs from his house or her house, or the retrieval of the $550,000 and some CDs from her house, or the the freezing of her accounts with 2 banks, Prudential and Societe Generale Bank, the total amount comes to 12.4 million. And I think 12.4 million is so huge an amount to stand in the name of a public officer, and particularly a minister of state.
But the point about standing in the name is where I was pointing to. There's controversy over that, over part of the ownership of the amount.
Part of the ownership of the 1 million.
Yeah.
But the accounts, Prudential Bank accounts, and the SGSSB accounts are in the name of the former minister. Or you know of contrary evidence to that?
Well, if you read the court documents that the special prosecutor has filed,
yes,
it says on it in writing to them that, of course, that. But in that, I need to clarify that the amounts is the value, the total value of transactions that the OSP assessed over a period. So that offers clarity. The total value.
So this
assessed.
This is an ongoing and unfolding story.
Investigations, yeah.
Investigations that we are all following. I see some systemic failure because the Anti-Money Laundering Act, Act 1044, establishes the Financial Intelligence Center, and there are accountable institutions and national authorities listed in that act. There is a requirement for reporting suspicious transactions in that act. There is a limit, an amount of money, a threshold that an individual can put in her personal or his or her personal account. And that if an individual walks into a bank and puts monies into that account or his account more and above the threshold provided by the Financial Intelligence Center, that should trigger a red flag and a report of a suspicious transaction. So all this while that the minister was depositing monies in her account, the accountable institutions include the banks and financial institutions. Did they inform the Financial Intelligence Center?
Or maybe it didn't exceed the threshold. We don't know that yet. It's still an investigation.
So there is a requirement on reporting on activities of politically exposed persons, particularly politically exposed persons. Mind you, the anti-money laundering law is supposed to deal with process of illegal or unlawful activity, process of crime. That customers or banks are supposed under the law and under the Financial Action Task Force rules and recommendations, and particularly recommendation 40, to carry out customer due diligence, CDD, on their customers. They have KYC, know your customer. So Evans, if you have an account with a bank, the bank must know all the jobs, your employment history, and who your employers are. And so that any time money comes into your account, they can trace it to. Did they?
But on this matter, isn't the focus more on what was found in a home?
No,
because
you must trace it. You see, you must look at the procedure.
It's what was not in the bank, but rather what was home. Isn't that what this is?
What was in the bank? So are the banks
not what was in the bank? This specific matter.
No, what I'm saying is that in fighting anti-money laundering, the Financial Intelligence Center is enjoined to carry out bank vulnerabilities or real estate vulnerabilities and recommend actions, because there are many ways that people can hide proceeds of crime. I'm saying that for the theft at a home, it was on happenstance.
Yeah, but that's the focus on this.
Even that one. What happened? It was because the house helps were found in the room of the minister that drew their attention to the fact that something could be happening in their absence or without their knowledge. That led them to look at how much was at home that they knew they had kept and how much had been stolen. And so that was the indication to the minister that something was happening in her.
Happy with the investigations done so far?
For us as Ghanaians, that was the trigger point to begin to look at the activities of the minister. And that is why the OSP took up the matter, to evaluate the minister and see whether the resources that she has can be equated to her lawful income, whether by inheritance, by salary, by gift, or whatever. And that's what is happening.
I mean, Richard, on the same subject, I know it's been the party is taking is the collateral damage, right, significantly.
Yeah.
Because it's playing out within the context of all these economic challenges that everybody's facing, and then one of your own that seem to have a lot of money at home.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from the party as a corporate entity. So how is the party taking all this?
Well, thank you, Evans. I think the party at the appropriate time will speak on the matter. Except that, right now, the way I look at it, everything is fluid. There isn't any conclusive document before us to examine. That is not questionable. The issue is under investigation by, I think the special prosecutor is working on it. I think the police is working on it.
AG2 is interested.
AG is interested and they are working. That demonstrates the seriousness that is attached to the matter, which justifiably so, it should be, because a very concerning issue. But what I have always said is to say, and I think is a position that we should all hold, especially as a position of law, that we cannot convict people subject to just public opinion. The courts must examine the evidence. And so the question I ask is that what's the evidence that we're assessing, and which basis people are mischaracterizing her as having been corrupt and denting her image in many ways. I mean, because if you just listen to everything that is out there, you would come to some summary conclusion that she's done something wrong just by merely having money in her room, which money may be her own money, we don't know. Which money, the popular position is that it's not her money, it's somehow money she's corrupted herself to gain. And so in the midst of all that confusion, I think that we should go back to base and say, what is the position of law? How do we determine somebody's guilt in our country consistent with our constitution and laws? And it is subject to the pronouncement of a duly constituted law court to say that, having examined the evidence before us, this is the verdict to say that you have corrupted yourself or this money does not belong to you. We have not had the benefit of that. Even the reports or the investigations that are ongoing, none of these institutions are giving us a report. So for me, Evans, what we are discussing now or being discussed is speculation and people's excitement, because of course the issue is of interest. People's excitement picking information from sources that cannot be verified. In fact, my caution always is that please, let's proceed cautiously and not go ahead of ourselves to assume that she has done anything wrong. Because Honorable Akufo-Addo is one who has lived a full life.
She's innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly, and that's the position. So until we get the reports to come in and suggest to us one way or the other that having examined the evidence, she's done something that is untoward, then we all can go and then have a committed conversation about why she did that, and then the residual benefit will be that what laws can we evolve to check that behavior subsequently going to the future. I just learned about some communication, part of it has been served to your media house in respect of some pronouncements about monies in a bank account. That the special prosecutor in his processes in court didn't specify those amounts. And so therefore people perhaps are picking information from sources that, if you ask me, I would say perhaps do not have the truth to be able to communicate. And as a media house, you have a duty to inform the public The only caution I would say in realizing what communication has come out from Honorable Sister Dapa's lawyers, saying that all the numbers that are out there, all the account numbers, amounts that have been related to accounts have not been disclosed by the special prosecutor, in which case everything out there may be deemed untrue or be deemed false. So I think that on the basis of that, we should all proceed with caution. Justifiably, we all have interest in this matter, but let's exercise restraint, allow the institutions to do their work. When the report comes, I think, Evans, you have occasion on your many platforms to have us interrogate and see then conclusively what actually happened and whether or not those monies were earned legitimately, and if not, what the sanctions are.
And Martin, just a couple of minutes to wrap up. Take one of that. And tell me, you've seen the investigations happening. We still see the police standing by their earlier position that it's her property. You've seen the work done by the OSP. As far as the process so far to ensure accountability, happy with everything else that you've seen from the police, AG, and the OSP?
Yeah, Evans. Well, I'm happy with the OSP, but for the AG, I have comments. But before I continue, let's make a correction. In law, it's not always the case that a person is innocent until proven guilty. No, there are exceptions. There is what we call the reverse burden, and that is what applies in Madame Dapa's case in respect of the cash. So corruption or corruption-related offenses is on one side, but that apart, in the Constitution, under Article 286, Clause 4, if we find you with property, a public officer, and it cannot be attributed to your income, inheritance, loan, then it's illegal wealth. That's unexplained wealth. So the burden is on Madame Dapa to explain. So the public has a legitimate interest in saying, well, the way she's not explaining, then it's possible she can't explain. So please, let's note it is not always the case that you are innocent until proven guilty. There's an exception. We call it the reverse burden. You are guilty until you explain. So if Madame Dapa chooses to keep quiet for all this while, well, that's her problem. It fits into the perception that she can't possibly explain. Please, so don't blame the public. That is also law. To every rule, there's an exception. Then point number 2, the Attorney General, hasn't done well by not going into the antecedents of the case. We've pointed it out on various platforms that, look, there was a case involving this matter last year. It went to a certain court. There were even 2 courts. It first went to a circuit court. Then they said the person who was put before the court was not the right person. I mean, the person couldn't be brought to that court. Under the Juvenile Justice Act, we are not to give details. So I'm trying to navigate carefully. So I don't want to give details of the names of that person, etc. But the main thing is I went to a circuit court. They said, no, that's not the right court. They took it to juvenile court. Madame Dapa was cross-examined there. She was crying and crying about this money. And Attorney General is saying he doesn't know. Attorney General's officers were informed. Then Madame Dapa went to AG to petition against the investigator. She reported the same investigator to the Minister of Interior. Harassed the investigator. So I'm surprised that Attorney General is insisting that they didn't know that there was a case in court. There were 2 cases in court last year.
Thank you very much, Richard. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, and I would have loved to give a quick bite at this to Dr. Tui Champam. But Doc, definitely this is a running story, and I'm pretty sure down the line, as the investigations progress, we'll get you back on. But that's it for News File this morning. Always brought Bank of Africa, MTN, Ashasi University, Robert & Sons Optical Services, Duraplast, DBS Industries, My Way, Cherry Tree Properties, Syntex Tank.